We're live. So Huw, just to jump straight into it, you've broken your hi everybody. So you've broken your 100-day abstinence. So celebrating what is a momentous occasion of you moving forward with your first major development. And so you were saying that your mate didn't pressure you, but you felt like this is an occasion we should celebrate.
Yeah, I think it's really important to talk about consistency and our shitty introductions are just bang on time. I should swing beer from my face.
Yeah, even think about it.
I mean, I'm just an aging old man. I feel the hangovers more and more, and I had a heavy, very social August. I think post-lockdown, me and my friends got together. I drank way too much, put on too much weight, and I thought I just got to get off the booze because of the knock-on effects it has on me. So I thought, right, I'm going to go 100 days. And 100 days was due on the Tuesday just past. Now, I've my first property investment, which is a pub, which we're converting into 5 flats. I wanted to view it for the first time in the flesh, looking at everything in detail. We had a camera due come in to do some work on it, to take some inner shots. So it was like, right, do I break that and have a drink with my business partner to kind of celebrate this is it? Yeah, absolutely. So I'm just talking through the state that is this pub. And that, on the Saturday night, it just felt right that I celebrate with my business partner. But I had planned to go 100 days. And do I drink on Saturday and break it at 96 days? Or do I keep stay resilient to my original plan and wait 100 days till Tuesday? And it didn't make sense for me to wait until Tuesday. That was absolutely the time to have a drink. And because I was traveling, I know we've spoke about anxiety and the effects, Sean, and I get it with alcohol the next day. So because I had a journey the following day, I decided to just have 2 glasses of wine, and I actually felt okay. I didn't sleep as well as I normally do, but I felt all right. And then now a week on, now I've broken the cord, and I'm kind of technically a drinker again. I had my Saturday night in with Lou, watching Strictly Come Dancing. Got the glass of wine out, and I went into 2, went into 3. I was eyeing up whiskey. I was like, do I have a regretful shot of whiskey or not? I'm like, because it won't be a shot; it'll probably be a treble shot.
Yeah. That's harsh.
I said, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And I'm so glad that I did, because I woke up this morning, my mouth and throat are like a little bit like irritated by it. I'm just like I'm a little run down today. Like I say a hangover. It's just I'm not myself. My belly was like playing up last night when I was in bed. I was like, why do I do this to myself? So I think I'm just gonna like knock on the head for a while again. I think until there's a real occasion, I'm just not going to socially drink. I've just had it, mate. I just don't want to be dealing with it anymore. So yeah, I think going into Christmas, it'll be an interesting challenge, because if I'm out with friends, I don't know what the situation is with like pubs and stuff as well. I don't think that's going to be changing, but so it might be a bit easier. But Christmas is usually a really challenging time with like booze flowing, food flowing. So I'm going to try and keep a lid on it a bit more over the next few weeks. But I've had I've had great progress losing weight without watching my macros too much, and things have been going smoothly. Drank last night. What I would normally do is shovel food into my face before I go to bed, but I resisted the urge. Instead, I had 2 sticks of celery, which is a massive. That's a win. That's a win for it, because normally celery, it's cheese, it's bread, it's like just get in my belly, keep the hangover at bay. But I just stuck with 2 pieces of celery and kind of did enough. But I put on over a kilo. Put over a kilo over one night, and I'm like, no, that's it. I can't be dealing with this. Feel like crap. Put weight back on. It's just not worth it for me.
It's a difficult decision because I think you like to have a drink. I like to have a drink, and I know that if you were just to throw away how you feel the next day, you would probably continue to have a drink from time to time.
No, I'll push back, mate, because you know what? Last night, what I've noticed about, because I've been a lot more mindful about what I eat, and the first glass is really enjoyable, and the second one is okay. And normally at that point, I've got a nice buzz, and I feel at that point, getting a buzz is nice. But what precedes that, within maybe the space of half an hour or an hour, then this it's like the start of the hangover kicks in. I'm like, I feel it on my belly. I feel bloated. I feel like my guts aren't like normal. Like they're not. Like I'm not gonna shit myself or anything. It's not like something crazy, but I know this isn't. I don't feel good. Okay, I don't feel good. I don't feel very.
Yeah.
I don't feel healthy or good about myself. So physically, so then it kind of ruins the rest of the evening for me. And then bed, it's not great. So I enjoy the buzz, absolutely, but when that wears off, whenever there is, mate, half an hour, an hour, it starts from there, really.
So you enjoy having a glass of wine, I think, is more the takeaway. And if there was no ramifications, you like the taste. If let's say you could have a few glasses of wine, have a buzz, not feel bloated, and wake up feeling fresh. It's not so much the alcohol or the drinking that's the issue as such. It's how it makes you feel either immediately after, the next day, as you're becoming an old man. Which this is something I can identify with. I'm not quite to the degree where I'm thinking I want to or need to quit. However, I've had to make some substantial changes on not only my regular consumption, but even Christmas consumption. I don't know if you remember when we first were hanging out. Every year, I would do a photo of my Christmas breakfast beer to sort of on Facebook.
Yeah,
I don't know if you remember that.
I do.
I used to like for me, Christmas was the day where I could just go ape shit, just drink all day, eat whatever I wanted, stuff myself until like I'm worried that like I'm gonna need to take 3 shits just to clear that one day worth of eating. And I now am getting to the point where I still like a drink, but I'm very conservative with how I used to be when we were together. So
okay,
as an example, I went to if Simon's watching this, I went to Carden Park on a golf weekend, and they were supposed to go with the guy who he's I've only played golf with him a few times. He's kind of he can be a dick at times, and he has this mentality, from what I understand, and Simon may correct me on this one. When they go on holiday, it's like we need to stay up till 4 a.m. and we need to get absolutely shit faced, and we need to feel like shit the next day. That's what we want to pay for. That's what we want to get out of our golf holiday. And we were going to this really great golf hotel, playing these really great courses. And golf for the first time has made me think, I don't want to, be looking forward to getting back to the hotel room whilst I'm on the course playing this round that I wanted to play.
Yeah, exactly.
And Simon noted, so Simon was somebody who's like, yeah, we need to get shit-faced. But as we got to the holiday and as we started going through the weekend, it turned out to be one of his best weekends away, because he was on the golf course enjoying the day. We still had drinks. We just slowly drank throughout the day, and I think we went to bed at like 10. So we just started earlier and finished earlier. And it was just really relaxed. There was no pressure, nothing. And I felt and that was one of the first times I really felt like I don't have to stop drinking. I want to stop drinking as much. And that's happened over the last few Christmases as well. I want to enjoy my day. I don't want to be sitting around at 7 at night unable to move because my stomach is full of beer and cheese. So I want to enjoy it, but I don't want it to make me feel like shit.
Yeah, I'm fed up of feeling like shit, and I think it's maybe I got physically sensitive or whatever, mentally sensitive. I don't know, but you've known me for a while, mate. Like booze, I don't think booze is great for you. I just don't think it's wired for me mentally or physically. I think I can take other things better than other people. For example, coffee. I could come off that and have periods without it. It doesn't impact me the way it does other people. And I've had a DNA kind of sampling, some tests to kind of prove that, to back that up. But alcohol is something that I think a bit more sensitive to than other people. And I think that's just the middle-aged man feeling. I'm sick of feeling like shit. And I just only want to be doing things that make me feel good. And I mean, it sounds ridiculous, isn't it? Because you're like, well, yeah, of course that's what everyone wants, right? Well, just for me, having a couple of glasses of wine just takes me over that edge, and it moves me away from my goals of. I got this bet on with my other buddies, Steve and Fenner. We've got this joint holiday coming up in August, and I'm going to have a 6-pack for it. 6-pack on the beach. So I got until I think it's the second week of August. So I'm kind of gradually cutting weight to do that, but trying to do it healthily, sustainably as I train. And I've just really enjoyed where I'm going, where I've been going, and to suddenly go right back on that. I mean, the problem is with me as well is that my issue is volume. That's the thing. Like, I don't do things by half. So
No,
I
you
mean,
don't.
am I drinking? Are we drinking or are we drinking? And like, okay, I'm drinking, then let's drink. Or I'm not. Like, or I just. So it's better just for me just not drink, because you know, after just 1 week, I'm already sliding in a third glass and really eyeing up. Like, I was thinking about that whiskey, and it took a lot within me to not do that. And I'm at my weakest when I'm drunk, and you're like, dude, it's fine. Just
Go
have a
for
shot of whiskey. And I don't have a finger of whiskey. I have like kind of 3 fingers or 2 fingers. I want to really savor it. You know, if I'm going to feel like crap tomorrow, I want to enjoy that. You know,
make it worthwhile now. But it sounds like the worthwhile now isn't happening. I mean, you're addictive. You have an addictive personality. I think I think in the wrong crowd, you could be a meth addict. I think if you roll with the wrong, I mean, there's really, but I think you have that potential.
Mate, when I was smoking weed, so when I we were really careful what I say here, but there was a lot of weed going on at this one house that I was at, basically. And we used to have I used to have it on the daily. I was running home from work, and I was just like running 3 miles or whatever it was, and then smoking weed when I got in. It was like one of the things I did, and it just consumed me, and I would just be getting high most days. And it was only when the paranoia stuff started kicking in more that I was like, actually, this probably isn't good. And no, that's a lie. Lou was the determining factor. She said, if you keep smoking it, I'm going home. So it was like Lou or weed, and I thought, well, you know, no, Lou. So I went with that option. But what was my point there? So that I know I've been around guys that have gone for the harder stuff, and generally, mate, it scares me.
Yeah,
like I know people that have done coke, and I'm like, I'd be scared that I'd become addicted to it. I wouldn't go near it because I know what I'm like, and that I'd probably like it too much.
That would be a good drug, I guess. Not a good, but that would be a drug that matches up well with you achieving a lot of goals and doing things. So that would be a terrible one, I think, for you to try.
Mate, I think it would be a disaster zone. So I kind of stay clear of that, which is great when I put my head into healthy things, you know, like understanding finances and health and fitness and eating and, you know, all that type of sleeping. That's great. Like I need to kind of keep that up, or skill acquisition in some format. But drink is just, I don't know, mate. It's, you know, the truth of it is just I'm not really kind of brave enough to say I'll never drink again. I know, because I think deep down I do want to get sloshed and really enjoy myself on those occasions. But I think just I'm going to stop the recreational drinking. I'm going to stop let's watch Strictly for a couple of hours and have a couple of glasses of wine. I'm just going to do that in. And when it really, you know what, I haven't seen Sean for 3 months in the flesh, or now it'll probably be a year since I've seen you in the flesh. Yeah. So next time we hang up, I'll get some whiskeys and wine, and I'll feel terrible the next day for that, because it loosens up the conversation. You really go somewhere. But sitting in front of a TV, watching some dancing, having a light buzz, I just didn't think it's the time for me.
I think as a joint activity, because I probably wouldn't drink as much in the same setting. I think we would probably just maybe have like 2 glasses, maybe 3 glasses of wine, or a couple beers or something like that. And we might have like a small scotch to finish off. I don't see us going nuts. But when you're having drinks with somebody, I think part of the problem with alcohol, the night of and as you're going to bed, is probably more linked to anxiety than it is to hangover, which that's the case with me. So I can't speak on behalf of everybody. And I think when you're with somebody and you're hanging out with them and you're having a blast, those anxious feelings are gone. You're not focusing on how your stomach feels, how your head feels, going to sleep. And I think it's when you're sitting around having drinks, I think you have more time to think about what you're doing to yourself. You're not distracted by somebody else, how your stomach feels, and how are you going to sleep. And I find that when I drink too much, I'll fall asleep for an hour, and then I'll wake up and I'll have like a rapid heartbeat, and I just won't be able to sleep. And I've had to find sort of like a little butter zone on my own, because I still like having that Thursday, Friday night glass of wine just to sort of signify you've made it, because I know you've been working hard. I've been working 50+ hour weeks. I've been working days and nights. I've been on my computer. I fell asleep actually with my laptop in my hand this week. I was working so much.
Yeah.
And I really like sharing that bottle of wine with Nick. And for me, where I feel like I'm getting quite good at finding the line that's comfortable for me. And for me, it's 2 glasses of wine spaced out over an evening, and then like a 2 fingers of whiskey, with a good hour and a half before bed, some water, and I feel fine.
That's key. Yeah.
Having
that time before bed.
But that's what I've also found though is there's certain foods that are actually really that don't mix well with alcohol. And I can have them, but I have to be careful. And what I found is there's a common denominator called pepperoni. And for some reason, whenever I eat pepperoni, I wake up with vomit in the middle of my throat in the middle of the night. Not that I'm throwing up, but acid reflux is so bad. And normally when we have pepperoni, it's having pizza. And when we're having pizza, we're having red wine and I'm having a whiskey. And I hate that feeling. It's because you wake up and you're like, oh, I have to go and throw up. And then when you're standing up, you're like, I don't feel sick, but I've got this awful taste in my throat. And it's like real bad acid in your throat. It's almost like it's been there for a while and you've got a sore throat and it feels terrible. And I think that's when I mix those real acidic combinations, and alcohol sort of helps facilitate that. The last 2 times it was I've had that issue was when we had pepperoni on pizza. So I just have to be I think as you get older, you have to be very conscious about what you're putting in your body. And you really have to start listening to your body because your body is doing more. It's making more noises as you get older.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm really listening to it as well. I think that's probably the factor. I'm noticing that now. And the difference, so I was training earlier and the training's off. Everything. And I woke up in the middle of the night, which I would say most nights I wake up. 4 out of 5 nights I'm up in the middle of the night just going for a pee. It's a habit thing. I don't need to, and sometimes I get a bit warm because it's cold. I've got all the blankets on me, and then I get quite warm. So I quite like a cool walk to the bathroom and come back. And I think the whole process, emptying my bladder and getting cool, is just a way of helping get back to sleep. Well, I just noticed a bit of a difference last night in that when I woke up at 3 a.m. it was like ding, I was wide awake. I really felt like a different level of alertness at that time, which wouldn't normally be the case. I'm usually pretty groggy and I might be to and fro for an hour and a half or so in some cases, 2 hours when it's not great. But it was more difficult to drop off last night. But no, it's all over, mate. And I think it's an individual thing. It's each to their own, and like you say, you can still. Alcohol isn't bad. Alcohol doesn't equal bad. It's just it's how you utilize it really, and for your individual idiosyncratic ways. And for me, it's not great physically, and I struggle with the volume side of it. So it's probably better to avoid it altogether.
I think that's the case with everything, though. And this is why I don't fall too heavily on when we talk about like the Game Changers documentary, for example. I don't fall too heavily on a lot of these things that we talk about when it comes to diet, vegan, no meat, meat only, just eliminating things, adding nothing but this. And I think at the end of the day, it's very specific to the person. And I know when I was younger, an Atkins diet was all the rage. Talk about how healthy you can be, which I'm sure you can eating nothing but meat, but there's also going to be people genetically predisposed to specific diets. So Eskimos are going to be more prone to a fatty diet because that's what they were, their ancestry was raised on. So I think it's very specific from person to person.
I'm so sorry, mate. This is my mother-in-law. I guarantee it. Yes.
Oh.
So she just Lou's popped out.
Is she not watching? Why is she not watching?
I will have a word with her about that.
I don't know what's going on.
Sure. Yeah,
she should be on now and not having time to call. But I think it's very.
I was going to say she calls every Sunday for Lou, so she's not in. So sorry, mate.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. We will. This is the live version. I'm going to be chopping this down. That's why I've got these little tickers at the bottom. It tells me where I can chop and publish. I think though, at the end of the day, the one defining truth, because I think there's benefits, and you've got to go with what makes you feel best. And there's certain things that are, inalienably true. A lot of sugar is really bad for you. Sugar is bad for you, but if you have a little bit of sugar, it's not going to kill you. If you have a little bit of fat, it's not going to kill you. If you have a little bit of carbs, it's not going to kill you. Everything is about moderation at the end of the day. And there's a lot of I find it when we start going down these routes where there's more meat being consumed, we now have a bigger database of knowledge that we can access to find out what's good and what's bad. I mean, as a totally unrelated issue, instance, vaping, for example. Vaping is not unhealthy, and now as we start to research it, there's things about vaping that are unhealthy. But I'm sure if you vaped in moderation, it's fine. Whatever. It's just about just listening to your body's signals at all times and I think understanding those signals quite clearly, being honest with yourself. That's hard to do, being honest with yourself.
It's arguably the hardest thing, because we can so easily fool ourselves. Like I was trying to last night with the whiskey, you'll be okay. There's enough time. I'm doing this early enough. I can have some food after. Yeah, you just enjoy it. And I'm really glad that I didn't. But I think, I'd agree with most of your points there, Sean, that moderation really is the key to life. And there's a balance to be had all round. I'm definitely like the one golfing buddy you were explaining where you just have to get off your face to have fun. Like I can't do that anymore. I used to be that irritating person that would be making everyone doing it and getting on your case if you weren't drinking more enough or fast enough. Like
it used to feel good though. It used to feel good.
I could handle it more, and it was. I had an identity, like I wanted to be a bit more of a party guy, and I wanted to be the guy that could handle booze. And for some reason, I put some pride and some value on that. And now it couldn't be further from the truth. Like I don't value that. So I believe that you don't need booze to have fun. Like don't need booze to loosen up and lose your inhibitions and do whatever. However, I think the flip side of that, I'm definitely not sitting here as all righteous that booze is all negative, because like I said to you, mate, I love nothing more. It wouldn't actually, if I was going to die in a week and it was like, what could I do? I would probably, I probably would just have like an evening with my friends, and ideally I'd just want to have a few drinks just to loosen it up. It helps it takes things to a different level. And it's not like, you don't need alcohol necessarily. It just aids in that process. It just loosens everything up and speeds things up. You get a bit sillier and like lose concept of time. You can kind of get into it. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but having a few drinks with friends is the main reason that I'm not suggesting like quitting drinking, but I'm just gonna stop the habitual drinking, because I used to, prior to this, drink every weekend. I used to drink on the Friday and Saturday. Those are like my drink nights. But I just want to get out of that now. For me, that's like the right thing for me. But who knows how long it's going to last? I don't know. But I'll give it a go, and we'll see how we get on.
Well, we'll see how we go. The holidays coming up. It'll be all drinking, all food, and interesting to see how we get on. I'm sure we'll be bringing this up again after I've had what it would be the equivalent of a block of cheese in one day. Probably that's for me the biggest weakness is cheese.
Is it?
And it's even harder now because Nick's eating more cheese because we don't eat meat in the house, and I don't think it's a meat thing. It's an environment thing. And I just, as is the case with my wife, she's very similar to you in a lot of ways, in that, she gets very committed to things, and I just support whatever. I'm the most annoying person in the world to live with because I'm just sort of blah about everything. You want meat? We'll eat meat every day. I'll work around it. But I think I like cheese, but I find that we're both eating a lot of cheese, and I think that's our bodies trying to get a little bit more vitamin D and a little bit more protein in our body because of all the vegetarian meals we're eating. We're still getting protein in a lot of whey protein and soy protein, whatever. But I think I'm noticing that with the diet the way it is now, we're just imbibing so much more cheese to fill those little meaty gaps in pastas and things like that. And when we're looking,
I know you eat pretty clean, Sean, and I would suggest it's probably the fats in that. So I think because of that, you eat quite a lot of vegetables. If you're not eating meat, a great source of healthy. Well, we need fats. There's essential macronutrient, and a very good source of that is meat. So if you eliminate that and you're eating veg, where are your fats coming from? Then it comes from oils or cheese, mate. God, you're not alone on that. I did it for Lent, and a lot of people in the office were just saying, I don't think I could do that. And it was one of the hardest gaps of little tests I did for myself is cheese, because I have cheese every single day.
I haven't gained, I feel fatter, and I think it's more of a mental thing, but I've not really gained a ton of weight, and I'm eating too much cheese, most definitely. And I think there's a bit of a balance. I don't think I'm healthy though. I feel like I'm really struggling with I don't know if I'm struggling with that. I don't feel like I'm eating as well as I should, but we're eating the biggest volume of food we're eating is vegetable. But I'm finding when I'm trying to fill those gaps with breakfast and lunch, it's cereals and cereal and raisins, or porridge and raisins, or I'll have toast or beans on toast, or it's a lot of like grainy things, or if we're in a pinch, crackers and cheese. And I don't normally eat crisps a lot, but I'm eating crisps. Just a lot of those little like convenient, like little granola, like just it's always the convenience food, because when you're not eating the meats or the foods that we're eating, there's nothing that's easy as such. Everything requires preparation. And right now I'm working probably close to 50 to 55 hours a week. And it's not good for me exercise wise. I'm working to the point where I'm actually stopping work, not when I'm done work. I'm stopping work when I can't physically read the screen anymore. That's what's been happening the last couple of weeks.
Can we shift gears onto that, Shawn? Because I've kind of had a realization myself over the last 10 days, and I think it'd be great. I'm just fascinated to hear your side of this, because I've gone through it myself, and I usually stay pretty rigid on my work-life balance. I actually pride myself on that. I'm someone that likes to think they can get a lot of work done, but also I cut off at a certain point, and I don't have my computer on in the evenings usually. The last couple of weeks I have, and I've noticed a detriment in other areas. So I just want to, sorry to cut you off there, mate, but I think
it's fine. I can talk about it.
I'd love to kind of hear about your situation and what you've tackled it and what you kind of find as a result from doing it, both good and bad.
Just showing how seamless this show is. And I had a feeling we were going to talk about that, and ignore the typing sounds. So my situation is a bit different, because I normally am quite good about separating work and life. I actually, so my company was bought. I don't know if I've gone into detail about all this.
Oh, I don't know if I know about that, mate.
So my company was bought. I work for a small not family-run company, but I work for it's not a small company. It's an industry-leading company in tech. And we've got a small group of employees. And the thing I love about working at this place is I'm in the room with the directors. I hear about a lot of the decision making that's going on. I talk to it doesn't feel like I'm working for directors. It feels like I'm working for mates. We're all in this together. And there's a sense when you have a small company like that you go the extra mile, and there's a little bit less stress with that. And there's a few nuances with my role where I've got a senior role, but I'm sort of in that development stage in my career where I'm in those trainings, and I'm being pushed into that direction. I think that you were when you were at PGL. So I kind of feel like my trajectory was mirroring your trajectory. But the person that I'm working for, so the way what's been frustrating me, and this is sort of the reason I've been pushing myself. We have this new company that's bought us, and it was a bit of a surprise. I think part of it is where my company sits in the sector it sits. We were killing it with COVID, and the product we were offering, this company didn't have. And I think they offered probably our directors a shit ton of money. They've been pushing to buy us for years. The directors did have a plan to sell eventually. And I think they just made this decision in a very short turnaround. And everybody, who's used to working for this family company, like just working, you don't worry about things. You don't worry about when you clock in and when you clock out, and you still don't. But it changes the spectrum a bit when you have, we're now owned by a massive, massive company in the UK. And it changes your mentality. And you start looking at the impacts of this company starting to look over everything. And you start looking at your current situation. And my current situation is I'm reporting to somebody who I really rate the person I'm supporting to, but the person I'm supporting to doesn't know how to do my job. So this person is giving us performance reviews. It's fine. Everything's fine. I get along really well with the person, but they've given me more work than this new job that I have, the senior job I have. And I'm in this position where I like having this additional work, this additional responsibility. And I've explained to this person how behind the nine ball I am. And she doesn't seem to understand what that means as far as time management. I keep getting more stuff. Now, there was a part of me this week that wanted to just say, screw it. I'm just going to tell her I don't want this added responsibility. And if I did that, that would, I feel like, push me backwards big time. If I'm saying I'm volunteering to not take on this extra responsibility, because the person who's managing me doesn't understand the context of my day-to-day. And this is the person I need to defend me if I make such a decision. And I don't have that representation in the rooms higher up. So my view right now is to buy my time, because what we are seeing and how I'm structured, this is all very boring, but without the structure I have where my manager doesn't work with us. She shows up a couple times a week, sees how we're getting on, and gets back to her job in her position. The company above us is going to see this, and they're going to start asking questions. And I think partially that's why I'm being pushed into a lot of training and a lot of new roles, new responsibilities. So I'm in a position where I'm trying to just work flat out, take on as much as I can for the short term, for long-term benefit. Because with this larger company now, I went from saying I'm probably never going to make more than 50 grand to it's not unrealistic that given the position I'm sitting with this company and how important this company is to my company, that I could be making 6 figures in 2 years. It's not impossible. I'm not saying that's likely, but this company has some really high up people, and my position and knowledge as a senior I'm the most senior person as it's linked to customer service in my job. And I'm the person everybody in my company goes to for messaging and how to deal with issues. So I'm uniquely positioned to see a very good trajectory in my career, which will help my work-life balance long-term. So I've been working on my job. So I have about 200 customers I've overseen. I've asked my manager, can I have less customers to deal more with the department side of things that she can't deal with? She won't say she can't deal with it, but she's giving it to me. So for instance, we have new starters. I've written the whole training plan, and that's because I do the job and she doesn't. She doesn't know how to, what needs to be done. So these things take time. I'm in the conversation with new database that's coming out. So I'm representing our department for what we need for the new database. I'm responsible for holding the hands of the new people that are going through the process. I've also been involved in these, company webinars that we've done for 700-800 people, and I'm presenting digitally. And all these things take time. And in the background, I still have 200 customers, plus not to mention my colleague is on paternity leave. So one of our main people's on paternity leave. So I'm taking that responsibility on. So I'm juggling more stuff in the air than I have time to juggle. So it's work-life balance is an issue because it is having a physical impact on me. Like I feel like I think I might even have hemorrhoids this week because I've been sitting on my ass so much.
Oh God, mate.
Because I just felt like this pain in my sort of under. I'm like, I'm not worried. I'm going to go see a doctor after Christmas, but I think it's going away now that I'm moving around. It goes away on the weekends when I start walking around more. I think it's hemorrhoids from sitting on my ass too much. World, I'm glad you know this now. If you want to talk more about my ass, just put a comment in down below, and we can do a Sean's ass segment. But it's that's sort of I guess because we haven't talked about it, and this is going to be boring for people who don't know me. That's why I've been working the hours I work. I'm normally quite good about working, let's say 10 hours, let's say 6 hours more than my normal weekly allocation. I probably work 9-hour days, 10-hour days, and that's quite comfortable. I just work from like the morning until the evening, and when I'm done, I'm done. And then I'll check emails on the weekend. I'll do some follow-ups, no big deal. But now it's just like, Friday, we went out Friday night to a drive-in. We watched Alpha to Drive-In, which was a nice break. I got back, and then I worked from like 8 till 11:30 on the Friday night. So it's just, you're just trying to keep up because I feel kind of helpless. And the only thing I could do is they sent out a company-wide survey to see how we're all getting on. And I messaged the director because we don't have a massive company, and it was a confidential survey. And in the survey, what I'd put in the comments was, so I had said, the only thing I wanted to raise is other departments have people that can performance manage them and act as an escalation point who know the job and work with the customer directly. In customer service departments, the people managing those departments don't have direct access with the customer at all. They don't even do the job. They pretty much leave it to us, and they hope they train up and get good people in role who can work independently. And I said, we don't see the benefit of improving our staff in how they deal with the customer, how they sell to, at all. There's no soft skills. There's no sales training. You just sort of get on with it and you get the figures. And I said, when it comes to dealing with issues in performance management, there's other departments that have somebody who's, boots on the ground on the front line with them who can monitor and assess their performance. I said, it would be good to see. And instead of saying, I'd rather see my manager go somewhere else and me to take over because I don't want it to be about me, I said, I'd like to see my manager have more time to actually work with us instead of drop in. So right now we report to this person. They don't work with us. And I said in the feedback, people in other departments know my role and how I work better than my line manager.
Yeah, that's not great.
It's the way it is. It's a small company, and we hire independent thinkers. And one of the benefits is you get to work solo. But on that, just to, before we come back to that, I had to message the director, and I said the first 5 questions were this: it's an independent. So let's say there's 6 people in my department, and it's a confidential survey. So the first question was, "What department do you work in?" Okay, so that's one of 8 people right there. All right, well, fine. That could be anybody. Let's say it could be 10 people. Let's say 2 departments that deal with customer service. The second thing was, how long have you been with the company? All right, so we've just narrowed those 10 people down to 5. What nationality are you? White, non-British. Okay. All right. So we're pretty. And I emailed him saying, should I just put my name on this thing?
Yeah, just put your name on it.
And he reassured me. He's like, look, let it rip. Just let it fly. Just
Yeah,
lay into us. But we won't connect the comments with the department or any of that information. So they take those comments and they separate them. Whether they do or don't, I don't care. So the only thing I could do was send that back. But sorry, you were going to say something before I finish that boring story.
No, I'll just kind of finish off that point and go back to what I was going to say. But yeah, I've been on the other side of those comments, and we did that at PGL back in our day, Sean. And I think it's probably post to you, actually, mate. I don't know if you did one of these.
I never really had a 360 review process.
Yeah, I mean, it's fucking brutal, to be honest. It's not easy because I sent it out to people in my team directly, and then people into departments on what we can do differently, and it's all it's all confidential. So all you get is the kind of summary of the results. So, for example, how supportive you are, and then you would have like your kind of scoring followed by all the individual comments just clubbed together. So you'd see that. So I've kind of seen the other side of it where there is no access to it, and in some cases, like, I think that's so and so, or I think this may be that because of the way they've said it, or whatever, little clues. But I think that it's all really about protecting the person, so they feel they can voice something without any ramifications. So I think it's really healthy. But actually, in general, I'm a massive fan of Ray Dalio's book Principles, where he just hammers home that every single organization needs to have its radical transparency and honesty. So those two need to be there. So everyone needs to be able to say anything to anyone. You need to be able to speak to any level of a hierarchy, and you need to be able to be honest. And you need to not be able to take immediate offense to it, and just to try and see if you can kind of work through that. You have to have that environment. You shouldn't be shutting people down. So this kind of like helps bridge that gap, because I think a lot of workplaces are stuck a little bit, back in the olden days of just, do as I say rather than anything else. Going back to your point on your boss, I'm not judging her as a boss, or well, I suppose I am in a way, but I feel like she might be an incredible boss outside of that. I think that if I were to go in to an industry now, I know I've got the people management skills, and I feel I was very good at that, and I can kind of handle that. Straight off the bat, I can kind of just basically listen to people, talk to people, and just be quiet and just hear their side of the story and try and empathize with them, and try and dig and ask what's going on and what are the problems, and see if you can fix them. But I think secondly to that, it's massively important to understand the people that you're in charge of, what they do. You need to have just even a rudimentary understanding. You haven't got to be an expert. You haven't got to know more than them. Not at all. I don't believe that. But you need to understand it to a level where you can manage it 100%. Yeah. And if she's not spending time with you, she's missing out on the management side of it. I don't know what her other responsibilities are, but I kind of don't care. Like, you need to put time in every single week to sit down and try and understand that process. And so I just want to finish it up, Sean. But
sorry.
Like Catherine, she worked with both of us, didn't she, Catherine? Yeah. She was our ex-boss, and she was probably the best manager I've ever worked with. And she came from a big organization previously, and came into our smaller but still very large company, and had to learn something that she was totally new to. Exceptional at building relationships with people, but she had to get into a company which was in some ways there was a lot of bureaucracy there, and you had to go through several departments, and nothing was straightforward. And I saw her over the time just put the time in. And she'd always ask people questions like, what do you think? I need to value what you say. And there were still things that I always knew more than her, because I've been to every center and I knew things that we did. But she still you could see she put a lot of time into like understanding even the basics, which I think is really important. So I think your boss is missing a trick there for herself as much as anything, and especially you guys. So sorry, mate. I know you wanted to make a comment on that.
No, I think part of that, I want to make sure that I'm fairly representing people as well. And we're working in a different time and a different place where, and this, I want to try to make this something that somebody else can find value in. So not just talk about me and maybe try to translate that to a greater storyline, something that's more relatable. So if you are working with somebody who in this day and age, and especially with COVID, doesn't sit with you. So in the situation where we used to work with, Catherine was in the room with us. She understood what we were doing, and she had she could sit down at your desk and do your job. Okay, more or less. I mean, she could feasibly get through it to a degree. Not your job, but let's say my job.
To a degree.
Yeah. She would have been able to do, sit down at my desk for a day and do my job and fill in for me and answer just basic calls. And she had enough skill set to be able to, even if she couldn't answer questions, to at least get the customer enough information that we'll get back to you whenever. Just on a very baseline level.
Agree.
And the best way I can explain my situation and just to give the listener some idea as to how I deal with it. And I think I'm going down the best possible route to a certain degree. I'm working too much. That I shouldn't be doing. But in the situation I can relate, just imagine you have a manager who does give time for you, is available whenever you need to speak. But as far as their job is concerned, imagine having somebody who's never worked in an auto body shop, who, let's say their experience was selling candy, and they're overseeing an auto body shop and then a candy shop. So they've been given this side responsibility of overseeing this body shop.
You're right. Okay. But she has an area of expertise in this other.
Yes. So she's got an overarching area. So let's say, actually, forget the candy shop. So she's overseeing an auto body shop. Her expertise is in, let's say promoting. Okay. And in this position, she's been given that responsibility of not just promoting the auto body shop and making the adverts, but she's also managing the shop as well. So most other companies would have somebody that has, experience as a mechanic managing that shop and reporting to this person. So we have that unique situation where I'm going to make the assumption that she has been given this position and she has a lot on her plate, and that's not necessarily her choice. Now, when it comes to how we've worked over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had very capable people that work almost like independent contractors that are able to make decisions. And we're not really given that pressure on how we make those decisions, as far as how we discount, as far as how we deal with issues. We have a lot of freedom to do it. And there's positives with that. But I'm in a position now where we have somebody else coming in and assessing what's going on. And the thing I've always had an issue with was, we don't have the benefit of having somebody who can, on the other side of the coin, who can defend you when things aren't going as well, because they only have the stats to go on. They only have, you've only done this much, or you've only done this much. They're not seeing the 10 or 15 hours you're putting in a day. They're seeing the results. And in my line of work in customer service, your job is doing really well when nothing happens. When nobody reports anything, you're doing incredibly.
Yeah.
But when you work with other departments, so if I'm dealing with the technical team in IT, I'm helping them solve a problem. They're seeing my skill set. Part of the reason I'm where I am is because a lot of people in other departments said, you need to move him somewhere else because he's bringing a lot to this team. He's wasted where he's at. So that's part of the reason I'm there. So the other people who worked with me know how I work. And the only way that my manager knows how I work is through my stories and my feedback. And that's pretty much it. And numbers and customer feedback. And that's usually good or bad. So it's overwhelmingly positive. Yep, Sean's still doing his job, or overwhelmingly negative, and then I have to deal with negative comments. And in that sort of environment, you end up spending more time talking about the negative than you do the positive. And I have to be aware of the fact that this person could be looking to hold on to this responsibility because it's a nice career piece to say you manage multiple departments. You oversee this huge customer service wing. So I need to be very careful about how I approach this. And in that situation, I am making the issue not about her, but I'm making the issue about the position she has been put in.
Yeah.
So in that situation, if you have, let's say, a manager who is working, you don't know necessarily all the ins and outs of what's going on with the manager. You don't, if you're middle management or even you're you're in a senior position, but you're not in management, and you're frustrated with the people that are leading you. And that's the only avenue you have to go without going over their head. You then have to start questioning the department and the structure. So, for instance, I need support with this. I don't have time to do this. This isn't my responsibility. This is something that you need to make sure is done. How can I help you get this done? And then you can start to address so for me, it's addressing not you as the person that's falling short. You as the person don't have enough time to do what these other departments are doing well. So I'm really falling back on what we learned. Everything I do in my career now is very linked to that consultative process. That third-party referencing is every part of my job now. And that even goes to third-party referencing in a professional environment, in how we give feedback, so that we're not making it about a person, or we're not making it a motive.
Personal. Yeah.
Yeah. We're making it about a situation. This is my job description. This is what you're asking me to do, which is in and above my job description. I don't have the time. I'm reporting this to you. I'm not getting anywhere. So I'm going to feed back to the greater good. I'm doing a lot of work, and the person who's managing me is not, doesn't have the time to dedicate to me to help us get these overlying goals. So I'm hoping that feedback is going to get to the people who have asked for that feedback, and they're going to then say, maybe this is something worth investigating because of how it was articulated. Because right now, my contract needs to be renegotiated now, because we have a new owner, and they have a totally different contract structure. So there's going to have to be changes. So,
exciting stuff, right?
If I can continue working just for another month or two, not maybe to the degree I am, and maintain some of the things that I'm dealing with in that conversation, I can say, I'm responsible for weekly team meetings. I'm responsible for organizing training. I'm responsible for running training. I'm responsible for meeting with other departments on behalf of my team. This is not in my contract. So should I change my job, or should you take these things away from me? Not from me. You're taking them from me. I'm happy to offer help wherever I can, but I need my job description to match what I'm doing.
Yeah,
and if I'm not, then there's a problem in the structure. And that's
totally.
This is where I see, and I don't know if this is relatable to anybody else, but it's for me, there's an end goal and there's a strategy in place. And if, let's say, that doesn't come to fruition, then I need to consider speaking to my manager saying, I'm thinking about leaving because of this. I'm not going to just say, I want you to take this responsibility away from me. I can't handle it. I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to make sure it's documented. I'm going to make sure I have witnesses somehow. And I'm going to say, I can't continue at the pace. Here's my job description. I'm going to be very transactional about it. Here's my job description.
Best way, mate. Absolutely.
Here's the list of things I've been working on. I don't want to quit what you're asking me to do, because it's going to be I'm worried people will perceive that it's me not being able to handle that work. So I want to look at this from X's and O's. Here's what I have. Here's what I do. Here's the time I have. And here's the hours I've been working. So what are we going to do? Because I can't continue like this. And I don't want to take a step backwards.
Do people know that you're putting in that time? Is there like a way that people are clocking onto that or not?
Yeah, I think a lot of us do work long hours, because we have Microsoft Teams. So you see when somebody's on green, and I send emails at like 7, 8, 9 at night, sometimes 11 at night. And I make sure I send emails to people that are above the person I'm working for at odd hours.
It's another flag for me, mate, as well. Is that like, I think like a manager, this is just my perception, my belief of what a manager should be, is that they should be in tune to that. And I understand that you can't do that all the time, but you should be having an idea of how much people are doing, and just checking in with those people that are working a lot of out of hours time, because there's a welfare side to it. There's we're not, if you there are not many people that would say this, but if you had 10 million windfall, would you do what you do? And a lot of people on this planet wouldn't carry on doing what they're doing. And again, I'm going to make an assumption here, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you would. I think if you had 10 million in the bank, I don't think you would be doing this job. Maybe you'd quit it altogether, or
no. So this answer is working its way around the corner. I'm not 100% sure I quit, because I do love the company. So last year I would have stayed in some capacity, or offered support, or invested in this business. I really believe in the company I'm working with. I like the people I'm working with. And I think they're good to be attached to. That is when you get bought out by a larger company, it changes your perception on buy-in because you don't know this larger company. You're seeing emails come across from them every week, and they own multiple different branches and companies. And now your dedication isn't going towards helping this person, and this person out.
It's going towards entity,
you're going into an entity with it. And I think that answer is going to be changing. If I won 10 million, I think if I won 10 million now, I'd say, probably. I'd probably buy a golf course and run a golf course. That would be my thing. Own a golf course, and that would be my job for here to eternity. But I think the job isn't that far gone for me that I feel like I have to leave. But it's
I'm not sensing that either. I'm not sensing that.
No, it's getting there though. It is getting close to it where I don't want to. This is the best opportunity for me, and I need to stick around. But I think when you're in a position where your work-life balance is starting to be tested, you need to really take a step back, and because at the end of the day, you're going to be dead someday. And I'm making an assessment that these 2 months of my life, I'm not trading them out, but I'm just sort of. You have to sometimes lower your head and go through hard times to get to the good times. And you have to make that assessment and this is how I'm viewing it. You have to make an assessment. How long is this period of time? And can I sustain this drive over this short period of time? And I think I can for the next 2 to 3 months. I think there's a decent return, and I can go back to sort of controlling my life a bit more. But if your answer to that question is, I'm going to be in this position busting my hump for the next 12 months, then you need to reassess your current process and goals.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah, I think that's paramount. And it makes sense of what you now that you've explained it, why you're looking to kind of keep your head down and keep at it for the short period. And I can understand you doing that. As a friend that cares about you, it would just to be mindful of your health and to check in with it. And I don't like, again, some of the work that I put into kind of trying to study myself and look at philosophy and that type of stuff. The person that I follow doesn't ever have a late night. Like he doesn't ever compromise putting a laptop on in the evening, because he goes from a deep work process where it's all work, and then he goes from a deep love process where it's all about love, being around his family. So that both of those things are so important to him. He respects both of them wholeheartedly, and he doesn't want to disrespect one or the other by going too far. And I think that whenever we find ourselves a little bit wobbly and when we're not quite on it, and we have a look at our fundamentals. So how are we eating? How are we sleeping? How are we moving and exercising? How are we checking in with ourselves? Are we giving ourselves enough respite? Are we being too distracted? There are a lot of things just to look at, all these fundamental stuff, things in life. And when we go whole hog into, full force into work mode, you can easily lose sight of that. And I think it sounds like, that's started to trickle into your life, and it absolutely has with mine. I achieved a lot in the last 2 weeks, but there was a cost to it. And just to kind of share what happened for me was, I basically committed to doing too much, and they all had time constraints. I've always got work to do, and I work 7 days a week usually. But I'll work consistently 7 days a week pretty much, and just have a sloppy weekend, do a little bit of work. But I always like to do a little bit every single day, rather than I rarely work kind of 12-hour days. So I get up at 7-ish, maybe sometimes 8. It depends on how I'm feeling. But I'll start working within the hour after I've done my morning routine. And then I'll usually clock off 5-ish, something like that. And I may or may not work out in the day. But that's kind of like how I work. So I'll put a good kind of, 9 hours in, 8 hours in. And some days if I'm working out, I'll do 2 or 3 hours in a day, and that's it. But it'll be a heavy focus 2-3 hours, and then that's my work all day. And I kind of stick to that. But because of these time constraints of this viewing that I had with the property, I was going to get 2 books out before Christmas. Again, I've achieved all those things. I wanted to get a YouTube video out with a tour to show people what they're doing, to show people what we're doing. I did all these things, and I haven't been doing fasting for a while, actually, Sean. Something I haven't told you. I've been getting in my weight training more, and I haven't done my 24-hour fast for a while. And I actually went and did 2 back-to-back inadvertent 24-hour fasts where I just had one meal for tea and that was it. And then I didn't eat anything the whole next day until tea the next day. I woke up the next day like this, this isn't great. Like, and I missed training. And I realized even with a watch on, it buzzed a minute ago just saying move your ass. But this one,
you can turn it off.
Yeah, no, I want it on. I want it on. Okay. It said that I need to move. And so in the week when I had this busy day, I'd done 2,000 steps, and I was like, well, for me, I do 10,000 every single day at least. That's my bare minimum, and I have no threshold above that unless I'm ill and there's something wrong. I'm doing 10,000 steps.
Yeah.
And I said, Luke, do you mind? I know it's late in the evening and it was cold outside. I think it might be a bit drizzly as well, but do you mind going for a walk? I've just been stuck on a computer screen all night, and we were like, come on then. And I just got out and I could just feel my physiology. It was just like, oh, I feel crap. I've just had one meal today. I've just been staring at a screen, sat on my ass. There's so much more to do as well. I kept looking at my phone on. I was like, I got to put that away. I've still got so much to do. But we just went for a walk. It was a 45-minute walk, and it was just amazing. We got a long straight here where we live, and then do the loop. And then on that straight on the way back, I was like, do you know what? It's night and day how much better I feel now. And Luke said, yeah, I feel so much better. I was like, you just got to keep remembering how powerful it is to keep moving. And especially how when you coincide that with socializing, moving and talking with someone, and then you can take it to another level and be outside as well, and be in nature and the fresh air and everything. It was. I left the house having done loads, but there was still loads on the table, and I know you know that feeling. It's that anxious ridden uneasiness. And then I was walking back and I suddenly didn't care. It was like, actually, it's just fine. Like this is me feeling like this now after a walk is way more important than that stuff that can sit there, because that stuff will always be there. And in the end of the day, I am going to die at some point, and then that stuff will matter to me anymore. So I've got to be more respectful of myself and watch my, I've kind of just gone on the brink of ignoring my work-life balance. And again, I kind of pride myself on that. It doesn't really make sense to me to work like 12 hours a day. Doesn't make any sense to me. I only want to be doing things that are sustainable forever. If I can't do it forever, don't do it. So if I'm not going to do 12-hour days, no, I'm not. But I do take your point. There are, hey, sometimes you just got to roll your bloody sleeves up and get stuff done. And I think the key to that is ensuring that it does remain a short-term fix, and there is a reason behind why you're doing it. It's important enough to put other things like relationships and your health on the line for it, because otherwise relationships and health should supersede work every time. We need to make sure we have time for that, because I think it's in the Western world, we're it's kind of wired into us. We like work over everything, and I don't think so. Work is really important. It is massively important. And hey, so are relationships, and so are health. And we need to make sure that we're getting those things in. And work can really overtake. I think, and I think this is something I said to Lou as well about this. And this is a generalized comment. I don't think you'll agree with me on this, but this is just my opinion. But from the people that I know and the people I've hung out with and worked with, I think that just generally it's a very masculine energy thing. So I'm not going to say it's all men because I know female that do it, but especially it's a masculine energy is to get your head down, get obsessive on something, and don't stop until it's done. And it takes over health and everything. And I haven't worked like that since I was at PGL and trying to create my publishing business on the side. And it was really difficult well, no, it wasn't difficult. I didn't like that feeling that I had over the last couple of weeks. I felt good for doing the work, but do you know what? I didn't like the way it was slipping back into that, where work is everything. I've got to get this stuff done. It's addictive personality, complete, to the cost of all those other things. So I just felt it in my body. I felt unhealthy again. And I was like, I've got to avoid that.
Yeah. It's and we got Veg in today.
Hey, Veg.
You missed it. We had a lovely conversation, and I don't know if you got to watch the end of it, but it was really interesting to hear Veg's point of view when we were talking about the election. We are going to touch on that a little bit later on, I think. But she writes, I read somewhere that millennials are obsessed with their to-do lists. I think to-do lists, it's an old and a new thing, because my wife is not. Is my wife a millennial?
We are technically, I think it's 80s is still millennial.
I'm a Generation Xer. I'm an old man. I'm 77.
I believe 80s is still millennial. I assumed it. I thought it was initially people that were born around the millennium, but it's.
I stand corrected. My wife is obsessed with to-do lists.
Yeah, well, me too. Me too.
I'm not major into to-do lists, but it's you do have when you're looking at organizing your life. I do think lists are good for laying out, focusing you on what you need to accomplish. And for me, that's really important because I have the attention span of a gnat sometimes, and when something comes in front of me that seems important, I just change tact. But I think when I look at just sort of touching on what you were saying with time management, and taking that control back, I think it's something that I think is a goal, and I don't think it's something people can immediately do all the time, because I think there's two different sects of people that maybe aren't linked to who's the name of the person you were referring to who takes that time for themselves?
Brian Johnson from Optimize.
Brian Johnson. If we look at like Brian Johnson's position, even your position, I think there's people that do have some more freedom where you don't have the freedom where you can necessarily do whatever you want when you want, because you have a bottom line you have to make to pay the bills and to eat. But there's people where you look at in a professional environment who don't have the ability to make decisions immediately to impact their well-being. And that's where the challenge comes in, because it's not as if people that are working for somebody can just make a decision to change their work habits straight away. I'm going to just turn off at night and I'm not going to do this, that, and the other. That is a choice that they can make, but I think it's more nuanced than that. I think sometimes people have to there are times where you are going to have to lower your head and plow forward, but you need to make sure that end goal is not unattainable or isn't going to have a major impact on your personal health, because we don't control all those factors. We don't control who we work for. So for instance, if let's say I decided that my situation wasn't good and I was going to log off at 5 p.m. at night or whenever, I would be considering backup options for my job in case things didn't work out, because I don't control, in my position, I don't control what my manager thinks of me. As much as I'd like to manage that relationship.
Yeah, you don't control it.
I don't control it, because at the end of the day, I'm not in the room with people who are making decisions based on my well-being. I have to depend on somebody who I speak to for maybe 20 minutes every week to make those decisions and represent my needs. Because I don't have that position, I feel like I have to plow forward. I don't have to. I'm making a choice to plow forward. But if I'm not plowing forward, before I make that decision to change my behaviors, I need to have some sort of a strategy that takes me out of that scope. And I can't immediately make that decision. So I think there's people, or if you're on the other side of it, if let's say you're self-employed and you need to eat, sometimes you have to work 15 hours a day to maintain the status quo. And you need to take time to find an alternative from, let's say you own a restaurant and you're working every day for 15 hours a day because you have nobody who can staff the restaurant. You don't really have those options. But I think the important note is your goal should be a work-life balance. I think that's the ultimate goal. I don't think it's something where everybody can immediately decide to all of a sudden have a work-life balance, because you put yourself in a position through inexperience and, poor judgment at times.
I think my point on this is that people have more choice than they realize. I think because you corrected yourself there, and I'm glad that you did, because you are right. It is a choice. And I think people forget that it is a choice. And if you go into but I do agree with you that it isn't just something just straight away tomorrow everyone can do immediately. There are certain circumstances and certain times of year. There are certain waves that you need to go. Look, for retail, it's nuts for retail, but they know that in January the stores are going to be empty. That's okay. COVID aside, because I know things are very different, but that's just an example of how December, it's all hands on deck, and January, you can kind of let people go even, or the hours shift, and so there are certain occasions where you have to step up, and other times not. I think just as a default point of view, I think there's this misconception that the people that do more hours than they're contracted are working harder, and I disagree with that. You're working longer. That doesn't mean you're doing better, more constructive work. In fact, what you could be doing is just idling more. And what Brian Johnson from Optimize kind of preaches is the notion of deep work, and that so many people go through the process and they do this shallow level work where they're highly distracted, working on multiple things at once whilst they're in an office environment. They've got a TV on in the background, they're talking to people, but I'm working 12 hours a day, working in air quotes, versus a station which is totally optimized. There's no notifications coming in at all. Phones are out of view. You've got a to-do list that's already been decided the day before, and you're working ferociously for 3 to 4 hours, and that's your day. And actually, if you work it very intensely, you have good energy because you've slept well, you exercise well, you breathe, you focus on all these different things. You're working on what's important now, not what you want to do, but what needs to be done immediately. Then you absolutely don't need to be working 40 hours a week, or more than 48 hours a week, above your contracted hours. You can be so good that in the time that you're undeniable. And that's actually what I tried to do at PGL. When 5 o'clock came, I went home, and unless there was, because I could stay there all night. So what, look, sometimes I stayed behind, and that was fine. I never asked for extra hours or anything like that. But I always came in early. I always came in to do a little bit early. But when the time came, I would shut down. And sometimes it might be 5 or 10 minutes, but I'd be going home because that's when I'm contracted to. It's like, well, Huw, you still got all these things to do. Yeah, but I'm contracted for 40 hours. So I'm working flat out for all that time. If you want more stuff to do, then you're going to have to take some stuff away, because I'm not sat around talking to people. I work very hard when I'm here. And if you want more stuff, you're going to need to employ more. You need to take something away from what I'm doing. So it's kind of, actually, my manager kind of, she did admire me for that. She said that she struggled with it. She would go home, have a laptop on. I never did that. But I still think I did a good enough job and left a good enough impression that I wasn't, no one kind of, I don't think anyway, saw me as someone that was lazy or ineffective. So that's where I could put the pushback. There's this thing that, I did 12 hours today. Oh yeah, I think I could probably do more than you in 6. I know that there are people that work harder than you in far less time. So it's not all about volume. It's actually about the effectiveness of what you're doing and actually what you're focusing on, because people will resort to the stuff that they don't want to do. They'll task switch, they'll be distracted, and they'll look for distractions as well. So a lot of things to come in there. I know Veg has got a comment there, mate, so I'm going to read that now and shut up.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, you're going to read this. Yeah, we're getting really, I think we're getting better with reading comments. But that was
helps though, doesn't it?
Yeah. So maybe the fact that we discuss things like work-life balance is the first sign it's time to revolutionize the system and remodel the 40-hour work week. Yeah. There was it Andrew Yang, Veg, that wanted to talk about a 4-day work week, and there's some countries that want to experiment with that, because there is a point where, and my wife has noticed this with going into an office, and you and I worked in an office together. When you go into an office to work, you spend so much time bullshitting around and talking about. Like, she went in to work in the, she's been working from home because of COVID since, I want to say, March. And she's noticed that she is more tired and gets more done at the end of the day because there's less. She went into the office one day and she was really struggling to work because people were talking about the football. They were talking about what was on TV last night. Yeah, and she said, you know what? Nobody did any work at the end of the day. I mean, they did, but there was nothing different. I mean, I'm sure there was more conversation because people hadn't seen each other in a while. But the way we set up our lives to go into the office and to work, we're social people. And you're not working that amount of time. Now, if you had 4 days to work, I think there's a reasonable argument to make that you feel over those 3 days, you have more time to get accomplished what you want as a normal human being. We used to speak about this. One of the things I always struggled with normal employment situation is you're not doing what's natural. So if you're a hunter-gatherer, you're working hard to eat, and you're not doing that because, I can't be bothered to get up and hunt. You don't think that. It's something you naturally do. You go outside, you hunt, you get your food, you eat. It's nature. And now you're going into an office to convince people to buy shit that doesn't really make a difference to you, or you're going into, make something for somebody else, and the sole purpose is for you to put food on your table. And these are not natural things. We're not predisposed to go in and be somebody's bitch all day, which is kind of what happens in the employment world. And
sorry, go on.
No, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, mate. I'll cut you off. Please carry on.
And I think, we have to learn to adapt to, and the reason I like the 4-day work week is simply you have more time to be a normal human being and to be yourself. And that 4 days might be more time that you can dedicate. I work harder when I know that there's an end goal in sight. And I think, you can push people harder over that shorter span of time. So I think there's definitely value in a 4-day work week.
I just want you to put up Veg's comment here, because that was what I was going to interrupt you with. That this was created in a totally different era. This was industrialization and how our parents and grandparents worked is totally different to how we work now.
Yeah.
Specialization is the key, and we can there are people that are advisors to YouTube channels. That wasn't a job 8 years ago. There are these unbelievable levels of specializations that you can do now. You can kind of do everything. And yet our parents and our grandparents have kind of brought up where it was very much get a job, you just shut your mouth and you work as hard as you can for as long as you can, you be good, and then you'll get a pension, you're okay. Well, the pensions were only due to last because our lifetimes didn't last as long back in the day. So people were 65 retiring and dying before 70. So they only had to pay you, 3-5 years. Whilst now, there are so many other jobs that people could do and make a very good living doing. And people are living, way into their 70s and 80s, and retirement is a totally different thing now. So, yeah, I actually don't think it's about working 4 days, and I don't think it's about working 40 hours. It's really interesting because you're an employer. No, you're like you're in employment, and I'm self-employed, so it's a really good different take on it. I think it's about you doing as much as you want to do is the key, and really the goal for all of us should be we work on something where it doesn't really matter how many hours I do, because I'm doing something I absolutely love. Would you, Shawn, you would do more than 50 hours a week on golf?
Oh, easily.
Yeah, but you'd want to, and you'd be pushing for 60. It's because,
by the way,
you wouldn't want to be doing anything else.
Can we hold that thought there, because I need a comfort break really quick. Do you mind taking the floor here for a bit? I really have to wee all of a sudden.
I don't know how to put the.
I will take care of it, mate. I'm going to put you in the driving seat. You're going to
be. He's gone. Right, Veg. Let's have a look. I can see a comment. And Shawn has said he's put me in the driving seat here, but Veg, I'm really sorry. I cannot put your comment up. So when he comes back, oh, wait a minute. Here it is. Okay, so
I'll
Veg,
be right back.
so
Sorry,
many.
I've got it set up.
Okay, I've just seen. Thank you, Shawn. Go and have your toilet break. So many employers have been afraid of what would happen if employees work from home. With COVID, they're forced to have a go at it and may get over their fears. Absolutely. I know that in the company that me and Shawn used to work for, it was a conversation that came up because we were in telesales. So we were all in an office environment, but you had your own set work to do. We were at our desk. It was open environment, so we would end up, people would end up talking, and it used to drive me insane, actually, because I just wanted to sit down and work. But people would argue, why can't we just work from home? Because you just have a telephone there and you'd get on with it. And it was like, no, we need you here. There was this like, I think it was a bit of a fear, like you're losing control. You want to be able to keep an eye on people and see what they're doing. When the reality now, COVID has forced us that people have to work at home. And as Shawn's wife explained there, she's actually noticed a noticeable difference from working at home and for herself without distractions. And then you go into an office and then suddenly conversations are galore. And, like we're naturally drawn into that. A lot of us are. So I'm personally, as someone that's worked at home on their own now for over 5 years, I'm really glad that people can kind of see that other side of it. And I actually think that there's going to be a massive shift in the workplace. So far to say, as a property investor, I'm going to be looking to build buildings actually and office spaces which are for entrepreneurs like myself to go into, which are more collaborative and inclusive, and make it a little bit more interesting. I think the whole workspace in general is going to change. I think you're absolutely right. So I think even as a manager, I have to take when I worked at PGR, I was a manager too. I had a fear of letting go. There was this control aspect. It's much easier when you can see someone doing it, but having it being forced out of their hands, I think a lot of companies will never be the same again. There was a time pre-COVID, and we'll never get that back. I think things will be permanently different for a lot of different companies. So you've just had your comment pop up there, and Sean's rejoined us. So
Yeah,
I'll
sorry about
actually
that.
read it as he settles himself. But I found an advertisement to do your working from home in Aruba for 4 months. They're offering specials to incentivize people turning their work into vacations. That'd be a great new standard. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very exciting space to see where it goes to. Before going into this, I just want to see if Sean wanted to pass on a comment on Veg's second from last point on the fact that employees were a little bit fearful of what would happen with people working from home, and COVID's forced it. So,
I've actually got experience with the last two comments. I think both of my last two, Veg, your last two comments, I can dovetail those into my current working experience. And just to help highlight the point, you work. It's interesting to see the dichotomy between me working for somebody and Huw working for himself. My stomach's a bit off this week, which is why I had to go run. And part of that is working stress. So stress is not gone from my life working from home. But I've been working from home for 5-6 years now, for just an incredible company. And so just going back to the other point, I'll put that up there. I thought you would have had control over clicking on these, mate. Can you just for, sorry, Veg, I will get back to this. Can you, just out of curiosity, can you click on the comments at all?
Can I?
Yeah, so can you see? You should be able to see comments if you click on comments.
I saw it, yeah, but
you can't click on them.
Well, I'm going to click on Veg's other comment now and see if anything happens. So I'm clicking on it.
Okay, so no,
seems to be happening.
So appreciate your patience. So when we take a look at what has happened, and this is something that's happened in my wife's work, because her work, she works in a more technical field, in construction, just very generically. And she's very high up. The thing I love about my wife is how strong she is, because she was working in a very male-dominated field. But it's also an old boys field. There's a lot of people who've been there for years that are taking pay for being upper middle management. And this is where you have too much management in a role. I think sometimes in construction, people that just show up so they can pretend like they're decision makers, and really they're just sort of an additional cog in the wheel that's unnecessary. But they're afraid that, their old school values that if you're not in an office and I can't watch you work, therefore you're not working very hard. And that is so counterintuitive nowadays, because we judge people not on how hard they look like they're working. We judge people on how well they do their job and the outcomes of their job. And if you're judging somebody on how hard they look like they're working, then you really need to reassess your management and hiring models. If you're hiring people because they look like they work well, then you've missed the point. You really want to be hiring people on the outcomes they're getting and their awareness and understanding. And when I look at my role, and one of the reasons I love my job so much is the flexibility. So the job I have is as close as I can feel to working self-employed, because of the comfort I have in the company, the freedom I have to make decisions that I feel are best. So everything I do with my customers, I almost never have to approve it or sign it off. I make a decision, and as long as the results are there, as long as the money's coming in, my directors are happy. And my current role, I can fly home tomorrow. So, and because of COVID, I haven't been able to come home, but I could fly home tomorrow. I could wake up at 4 a.m. and I can work to the end of the day. And I probably don't even have to tell anybody I'm there, because of the way the current working ways are set up. So we're opening up a whole new world of improving mental health. You're not spending time driving. So my wife would have to drive an hour and 20 minutes in awful traffic through just these awful British highways. They get really just bad in the morning because there's so many cars and so few spaces. And the amount of time that her managers are seeing now people are spending, logging onto their computers, how many hours they're actually working, how many emails they're sending is exponentially greater. And by emails, I don't mean just how you're doing emails. I mean the work that they're actually getting through, which is easily to judge based on email volumes now, because that's how we communicate with people. It's just so much greater, because we're spending more time doing the important stuff and less time wasting our time traveling. So that's less fuel. So employees have more money to spend. So maybe we don't have to give them as much raises. I think this COVID thing is going to really blow out of the water people's perceptions of what work is and what's important. I mean, I know when I used to speak to you, we worked at PGL, and you know me very well. And I used to talk about how stupid it was to wear a suit to sit in an office when you don't see customers face to face. And I worked for a law firm for a little while, and I had to dress nicely to go and see nobody. I mean, I'm not saying, I'm hanging out with my dick out. I'm actually wearing normal clothes going to work, but I don't think you need to wear a suit to sit there and work at a desk. And it's even just challenging those ideas as far as what is it that we need to get out of people, and how do we get this out of people? Not going back to, an old system that was set up on an old structure. It's throwing those out the window now, because we have new parameters. We have a new landscape that we can work off of.
You know what's scary is that there are going to be more and more entrepreneurs out there like me that realize we don't need you. We don't need massive employers. Like, we can do this ourselves. Like, we can now online has changed everything. I have an online business. I do online investing as well. So I could potentially never work again and be fine. But I do what I want to do, basically, and I love what I do. So I'm in a very fortunate position. But I'm by no means smashing it, as I've explained. I really love my training. I love hanging out with Lou. I've got other things to do as well, and work is a part of that. And I make sure I get the work done, or do what I can, and get on with the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I think that there's so many people going up now, like my nephews, and thinking of them as the first one went into secondary school now, and thinking, God, I wonder what careers advisors are saying nowadays. It'd be fascinating to hear, because the old, like back in the day, where it was like, right, if you work hard and you really try hard, you might be good enough to become a doctor or a lawyer or something like that. It's a really successful job and long term and great retirement. And I've got a friend who was a doctor, and he was explaining to me the retirement side of things, where he was into investing and trying to retire early, but was actually, he couldn't talk about it at work, because he couldn't talk about investing and retiring early, because that would lose him opportunities. He's not able to get his full pension till maybe even 75. It's something ridiculous like that. I think you can notice from the corporate perspective, pensions, understandably, because we're living longer, are changing. They're not as good as they used to be. Therefore, we need to have other things in place. So people like myself and millions of other people are learning just to invest and take care of themselves, and know that we don't need corporations to lean on anymore. And actually, we can create business now online, because computers are very affordable, internet's affordable, and the landscape, and with COVID in particular, it's forcing people that we're in an industry, hands-on industries like hairdressers and things like that. Like, God, my career is now vulnerable. I need to look at some other avenues to try and create create income and to pay the bills. So, yeah, it's an ever-changing landscape. We're working towards something which is antiquated, out of date massively. Yeah. Yet we still don't actually know what's happening right now, because it's forever changing.
Yeah.
COVID, for a start, we're not even the other side of COVID yet. So COVID, I don't see this happening. No one knows the future, but I don't think we're going to be over it in 2 months. But let's say we are.
No, we're not.
It comes through and all the vaccines work and everything's great. And it's like, we're coming out the other side of it. We could have another 2 years of this. It could go for another 4 years. Like, no one really knows. So, like, that's a concern in itself. We're not going to know really where the starting point be after that. But technology is changing, business is changing, entrepreneurship and innovation. It's, God, mate, who knows what it's going to be looking like in 15 or 20 years? Well,
the bottom line is going to drive everything. So my wife's work has changed their view on something that they would have never changed their view on without COVID. And at the end of the day, the bottom line is king. And the cost, and for employers to give more flexible working options is going to be a net benefit to them without having to change much. You're spending less money on capital, and you're getting more return on employees who are happy to stick around and happy to work flexibly with you. So I think that's an inevitability. I think things are going to change and adapt, because people have been given permission now to change and adapt. People have been given permission to do these things that they wouldn't normally have done. And it's not even given permission. They were forced into a position to challenge their preconceived notions as well. But at the end of the day, going back to your other point, there's always going to be people that are going to be in, let's say, my position, who I don't think I'm an idiot, but I'm not somebody who, I used to think I'd be quite good at being self-employed. And I don't know that I'd be a good assistant director at best. But I'm not somebody who I think I could tackle being, that seems, even for me, somebody who's technologically quite switched on. I've built, I've built websites and for my golf club and communication streams digitally. I still probably would be working for somebody unless I had a big chunk of change come in where I could buy something that's already been set up for me. And I think
I agree with you totally, mate. Like,
well, I think it's more to the point.
You're more tech savvy than me. Let's have that down. Yeah,
but that's the point, though. That's the point. I'm not somebody who I don't have the discipline to do what I need to do on my own unless I have some structure already put in place. And I think there's people like me out there who are switched on, who probably are still going to need employers to provide them a workplace, and those employers are going to have to adapt.
It comes back down to choice. So you can choose that you don't feel that you have that, but it's definitely within you and within a number of people to do it. And yeah. we got to acknowledge one thing here. We're not school systems over here, and I'd be interested to take Veg's opinion on this as well, because I'd imagine it being quite similar. You are trained up to become a cog in the wheel. You are not trained to become an entrepreneur. You have to go against the grain. So you have figures of authority training you for multiple length of time when you're in the school system to think a certain way. You're told what to think. You're not taught to learn. You're not educated. You're kind of driven to. You're forced to learn certain things, which some things you really couldn't give two shits about, and some things really aren't that fucking important, to be honest. Yet we don't spend any time on stuff like health, and really looking after our bodies, or how to do basic rudimentary finances, to my knowledge anyway. Maybe that's changed. I could be wrong on that, but
I think that is different now.
Entrepreneurship is something that is having the opportunity. Look, if everyone went out and did their own thing, like it would be a totally different landscape. And hearing Naval Ravikant talk about this was fascinating, because he believes we'll go more towards a freelancer kind of economy where people will basically log in and do the work that they want to do. It will be a choice thing where whatever field that you're in, you're you're a software engineer, you'll dip into the projects you want to do or not, and there'll be work there or not. But there should be a plentiful of opportunities out there, because we're always looking for more specialist roles. That he thinks the freelance economy and having more autonomy and decision about how much or how little work we do will always be there. So unequivocally, you are capable of working for yourself. Does that mean that you're going to be multimillionaire, super rich? Not, of course not necessarily. It is really difficult to make it possible, but it's also much easier than people realize just to get by as well. Like, it really isn't that hard.
No, I think if I were to lose my job, I could figure it out. But I think that the greater point I was making is there's going to be people that are going to be looking to work for somebody. And the landscape of employment, you're still going to have employers and employees. You're going to have a larger instance of self-employed people and consultants, and we're seeing that now. There's no doubt about that. But that's not for everybody. Even if even if that's attainable, people, there's people that just aren't going to want to take that on. They're going to want to come into that.
I agree with you.
I think that employers now have more freedom to, offer jobs working in Aruba, because, well, in this instance, so just to go back to this, I found an advertisement to do work working from home in Aruba for 4 months. They're offering specials to incentivize people turning their work into vacations. And there's a lot of things that could be connected to that, whether that's, there's going to be reasons why they're having them go to Aruba. I think that's not the point, but there's a lot of ways that people can now pay people to work creatively for them. And we're going to see a lot more instances where you're working and how you're working are just going to be night and day from what they were 2 years ago. And even now, this technology, us talking as we couldn't have done this podcast 3 years ago, 4 years ago. We thought about doing something like this, but remember when we first sat down and we did our first ever podcast that never made it to air because the audio was screwed.
Yeah, I remember.
We were in person. We were, maybe we'll do this once a month, but the reason that was 4 years ago, and we couldn't physically do it in this way, this clear. This isn't like you being in the room, but we're having a normal conversation as if you were in the room.
Absolutely.
And just technology is just zoomed along. So it's going to be an interesting world, to say the least. People are going to have more options, and they're going to have more options, and they're not going to be limited by geography. Companies are going to be able to choose best of breed, not best of geography. There's going to be a lot of changes now. And wherever you work, it doesn't matter. As long as you can wake up at the time work starts and clock off when work finishes, because there is going to be some parameter for people, that's fine. Doesn't matter what time zone you're in.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to see what happens with it, to be honest. I really don't know where it will go, but I'm excited to kind of find out.
Yeah. And for me, I've already been living that life that people in COVID now are living for the last 5 years. So this has been my office, and this has been where I've been. Yeah. So it's good to see people like let's say my wife's employer getting caught up to speed. But it's a whole new world.
It is, mate. Yeah, that was a really great discussion. Do you want to change gears, Sean? Was there anything else you wanted to cover today?
I thought we'd get some. I thought it might be good for the channel to hit some points that people outside of Veg and maybe a few other people want to listen to. There's a few bits that were going on this week we can go over, and then we can call it good. I thought we could start looking at some stories that are coming in. Veg was coming in last week. We were talking about the election. And this week, it's been an interesting week here in the UK with Brexit. And I think I've even made a banner for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Here we go. That's not a moving banner. I've got 2 banners at once. This is insane.
Oh, was that new to you? That's an accident.
I didn't know I could do that. This is, again, polished show. I wonder if I could do 2 banners at once here. No. So you can have 1 static banner and 1 moving banner. So Brexit, are you happy to talk about your original position on Brexit?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. I was a leaver, and what kind of threw me off totally was the negativity around being a leaver. Then suddenly, because I wanted to leave, I was then suddenly I was suddenly a racist. That
liar.
You know, I was someone that had zero interest in supporting other people. I was like, no, I just don't believe that we should be conducting it. That's like a country is. I can't imagine how difficult it is to run a country. Never mind trying to run a whole host of different countries that speak totally different languages, that all have different pros and cons. Like, we should be working collaboratively and helping each other, but our rules should not be dictated by Brussels. Our rules should be dictated by London or wherever, Manchester, Birmingham. And we should be looking after ourselves and setting our rules in accordance with some basic guidelines and trying to work with other countries and trade. And so I wasn't saying leave and screw all the foreigners. No, not at all. I'm married to a foreigner, for one, but engaged to a foreigner. But so there's potential.
That's like your one black friend in the Brexit conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not racist.
Yeah. Exactly. I got a black friend.
Yeah. So there was, there could have been a negative consequence with it going through if Lou was kind of right. Okay, we're going to have to get married, or you're going to be kind of shipped back type of thing. But yeah, so I was that was my position. I was very disappointed with how people overreacted on the one side, and leave equals racist. When someone made a very clever and probably accurate point that I'm not saying that all leavers are racists, but all of the racists are voting for leave. And I was like, that's actually, you're probably right there. I that was a quick and clever remark, but it really segregated the country, Sean. So
can we just do a quick rewind here on that, just to go back to that in a bit more context, because I had to do a bit of catching up, because Veg just said I know nothing about Brexit. I wonder how true that is, Veg. You seem quite switched on. I think you're full of shit, but that's okay. That's all right. We still love you. But but for those that, and to be fair, I joke, but I haven't really paid that much attention to Brexit because I didn't have a vote. I was not permitted to vote in that election. Yeah. I would have voted to stay because I didn't have enough information. I would have voted to stay because the information that the Leave campaign was claiming when I would look it up wasn't quite accurate to reality. I think it's a complex issue. I don't think Brexit, us leaving. So what Brexit is, just to give a wholesale overview, is Britain does not want to be subject to the rules and regulations of the EU. They want to make their own rules and laws because people here feel like that the rules and laws we're making are going to be more specific to our needs, not specific to needs of somebody represented in Germany. So there was a vote, and the vote was just very simply a yes or no vote by a government who didn't really want to leave, which is probably a dumb thing for them to do, whether you agree with Brexit or not. Let's put it on the table and let's have a conversation about it. But in reality, it's democracy. That's not how it works. So this was a bit of a timeline on what's happened. So the UK, it was 4 or 5 years ago, voted by a very motivated minority to, which I think, would you say that you would agree with that? It's not, the majority of people have always wanted to stay, but the people that were quite avid about it would have voted. And those that were sort of ambivalent and probably didn't want to go didn't show up.
I wouldn't know. All I know is that slightly more people preferred to leave than stay. I couldn't tell you more than that, mate, to be honest. I'd just be guessing.
So let's just say it was very similar to the Trump election. I think a lot of people would agree that Trump being elected president was very similar to the Brexit vote in many ways, and how it came about. People didn't expect it to happen, and the people that wanted it to happen were very passionate about it, and the people that didn't want it to happen weren't passionate about it to the degree they should have been until after the election. So now we have Britain's voted. There's no going back. And this was the timeline. And now we're in a position where we're out of Europe, and now we need to start negotiating for a better deal. Now, my position, the thing I've always struggled with in the whole campaigning piece is not so much your point of view, Huw. I totally respect your point of view. I understand why you think how you think, and I don't quite have an opinion. But the one thing I always struggled with, and I think it's coming to fruition a bit, is there was this discussion where we don't need these people. We don't need them. We can do it fine on our own. And then the next sentence is, we're going to negotiate a great deal for us. And I always felt like those two didn't really square. So it's if we were working together and I were to say, Huw, you can shove off. You don't give a shit about me. I don't need you. And then after I left this organization of Bearded Philosophy, I came in and said, listen, let's negotiate a deal where I can get half the videos, but I want to make sure that it benefits me more so than it did before.
I agree with you.
So you're not really going to the negotiation table with a hell of a lot. And I always thought, now we're in a position where we have a lot of rules, and Veg, I will get to your comments and questions. We have a lot of rules and guidelines, and as far as security, because Britain were part of Europol, so they were getting information on terror threats and shared information on felons and things like that. There was free trade, free access to fisheries, which is a big issue this week. And not just with travel, but with also trade and tariffs. So that's up for discussion right now. My position was, I always maintained, I think Europe probably has a lot less to lose than Britain does in this, but that doesn't mean Britain can't have a clear path forward on their own. So this week there was an interesting article that came up with the one area that I think a lot of people agree Britain have a lot of leverage, and that's in fisheries. And one of the things I learned this week in reading about, got my messages up there. One of the things I read was this whole fishery thing is a big area of contention, because Britain has the most, by far, because it's surrounded by water, has the largest area of fisheries. So, for example, 760 tons of fish caught by EU fisheries, I don't know if that's the right word, were in UK waters. 90 tons of fish caught by UK fisheries in 90 tons of fish caught by UK fisheries were in EU waters. Now, the stats I see didn't really talk about how much fish UK fisheries caught in their own waters, but there's a huge disparity there where the EU will be losing out on stocks. Now, the other side of the coin here, this isn't straightforward, because in the UK, I read that, what was it? Well, the UK, so I have a quote here. While the UK will be able to catch a lot of fish over the next year, it will be difficult to sell, as more than 3/4 of all fish exports currently go to the EU. So this isn't an issue that's black and white by any stretch of the imagination, because there's challenges both ways. And the more I see these stories, come to fruition, I'll just share the article here from the Express. I did look up some of the stats here, because you have to be careful with who you trust. I don't know if is the Express a reasonable newspaper to trust here?
I wouldn't know, mate. I would say my estimate is not. I think more Telegraph and Guardian personally would be more trustworthy, but
I found a few figures that were pretty in line with regard to the fisheries, as far as how much fish is being caught and sold. And there are going to be issues with how this is distributed, because there is an issue where there's going to be, this is a huge selling point right here for both the EU and for the UK. And the problem now is we're in a situation where, in my view, we would have been better in this situation had everything been as it was for the fisheries, because now there's going to be, a heavy lockdown on the UK's ability to sell fish, but they're going to have more fish than they can do anything with. And then for the EU, they're landlocked, a lot of those countries, and they're not going to be able to access the fisheries that they once were. And there's this whole discussion, this whole argument about I don't know if you saw it, about the UK employing the Navy to protect its shores from EU fishermen.
No, I've not seen this, mate. No, this is news to me.
So to me, this was more of a negotiation tact, where right now people are saying, "Oh, how inappropriate it is for Britain to use the Navy to block people from coming into our waters to fish." And for me, right now, we're in a position where in the EU there's negotiation going on, and right now both sides are flexing their muscles. So the EU is saying, "Go, we don't need you, but we would like to fish," and the UK is saying, "Fine, we're gonna break off. We're not gonna come to some agreement, but you're not allowed to fish in our waters." So much so, we're even gonna leak a story that we're gonna have the Navy policing the shores, so the EU fisheries can't come over and can't fish. And this is the situation we're in awkwardly. And we've had a few comments here. So just following up on that, if Britain didn't want to if Britain didn't want to be subject to rules other than its own, why did it join the Union in the first place? And I think it comes down to just trade and movement. And the way, when you talk about the EU in your view, it reminds me a lot of how states' rights were set up in the US, because the EU is a lot like the United States in many respects. States have their own rules and regulations, and not every state has the same rules and regulations. They feel like they should have power to make their own rules and guidelines that are specific to their world. So Montana, being a very low populated area, is going to have very different needs than, let's say, New York, who has one of the largest cities in the world regulated in it. That's not the right word, resting in it. So I think there's a lot of conglomeration between those two sets up, and I don't think there's any easy answers on this. Do you still feel like you're very much a leaver over the last 4 years?
Well, do you know what? Just the whole unrest about, first and foremost, I wouldn't say I didn't care, but I didn't know enough, and I knew that either way it wouldn't impact me. It's not going to impact me either way, whatever we do. I wouldn't be like, I wasn't like, contrary to what you said earlier, I wasn't a hard and fast leaver. Like, we had to leave. There were absolute advantages to, like, I want to travel through the EU. My partner's from the EU, so going back home is easy. There are definite advantages to it. I love the idea that we're in to support each other and help each other grow and benefit from it. But there were just some things that don't make any sense. For example, it doesn't make sense that your boss is trying to manage you and has no idea what you do. Then I don't think Brussels should be managing a country that they don't live in or understand, and we shouldn't be dictating what they do. It's just basic common sense to me. You shouldn't be running my household. I run my household because I live here, but you can have my bread, you can come to my garden, you can have fun here, and we'll socialize, and I'll help you grow here, and I'll come to your house. But I'm not going to run your household, and you're not going to run mine. It's just like, that's how I just see it, very simplistically like that. So the whole thought of having a massive, and the amount of money we were spending on it wasn't like we've got everything, down here. The numbers that actually came out of light, that they were incorrect at the end, and there was some misinformation there, which is a massive injustice, to be honest. But the numbers that they were touting that we were spending on this massive membership, to what end? And we were one of the biggest contributors to it, the UK. And to go back to Veg's point here, because I want to kind of give her the benefit from putting comments here. I can't honestly tell you. I think it was near the time that I was born, back in the 80s, is when I had no idea what happened, and I haven't looked into the reasons why. And I would hazard a guess that they were very different to how they are now. But it just seems it's some kind of like mafioso kind of Sons of Anarchy thing. No, you're in here to the end, buddy. Like, you're part of the EU, you ain't going anywhere, and we're going to make it really painful for you. It's like, look, if we don't want to be part of the EU, then let's just have like a grown-up conversation about it. It's got very political and people flexing, and it's a deeply complicated issue, far above my concept of what's going on here. But no, I kind of still stand by the fact that countries should be dictating themselves. Do we look down on Luxembourg, or do we look down on Norway, the fact they aren't in the EU? I certainly don't. I've been to Norway anyway, and I think they're both Switzerland. Sorry, not I meant to say Switzerland, not Luxembourg. But you know, these sovereign states, they're why can't you make a success? I think it can work. I think I can work for myself and I can make it work. I don't have to be part of your organization and be dictated to. You don't understand my circumstances. So that's fundamentally where I'm coming from.
I think it's, and this, I think that's 100% a fair point. And I think
and the inflated price for that. So the supposedly millions of euros a week we were paying to be part of this thing, that just didn't make sense to me. Sorry, Sean.
No, I think it's a lot more, and that's when I started looking at that. It's more complicated than that, because it wasn't as if all that money was going out. There wasn't any money coming back in, or there wasn't any resource coming back in.
Yeah,
and I think where this whole Brexit thing came about, my understanding is a lot of this was down to trade. It was down to access as sort of the two main drivers. And for the same reason national insurance works, it's about buying power as well. So the EU as a negotiator is a much more powerful negotiator with trade with, let's say, China and the United States than, let's say, Germany is as a whole on its own, because you're now pooling your resources. So when you talk about your neighborhood and your block, you know, I don't want to be a part of this club, or I don't want to be a part of this street, or whatever. I want out. Fine, you can have out. However, you know, when the neighborhood pulls together to buy insurance, or sorry, and buy electric, you know, on some sort of a group plan, that's where things change a little bit, because at that stage, you now aren't part of that party, and you're not going to be part of that benefit, which is fine. You have the choice to do that. And I think that's where we're seeing things happening right now in the EU. They're making a determination, and they have every right to be an asshole in the negotiation, which they are being. They're trying to push for things that they wouldn't ask another country to give them. Because if, let's say, they make an easy time of Britain leaving the EU, it's going to, you know, there's going to be other countries that are going to question, you know, the efficacy of staying in the EU, and maybe we should leave, because Britain was able to make their way on their own. And that's going to have a huge impact into how functional the EU is as a state. So I think they're very much making an example out of them. And I think, you know, the UK, and I think the UK is struggling with the reality, which it doesn't mean it's going to be bad long term. It's not a third world country, but I don't know that it's realistic to expect the EU to want to be willing negotiators, you know, given what's at stake for them. They don't necessarily have to be. You know, if you don't want to be a part of the benefits, that's fine. But you can't necessarily expect to still be getting benefits if you're not going to be a part of that. And I think it's going to be a long-term process. And we have a few comments coming in, by the way.
Yeah.
So I can't read your name. Sorry, my Cyrillic is really poor. Bubbies begin to tremble when Kamala Harris' presence is known. Britain. So this is going to the U.S. thing, because I think in the title I put something about Trump, and I'll jump on that. Britton Russell also goes out for Irish pies every so often. Not relevant, but let's allow some bread, baby. I don't quite understand that, mate. I'm sorry.
I'm the same. I'm not sure I follow that.
They eat that stuff in Germany. If you're referring to fish, yes, they do. What composed of a Texas breakfast? Beans? Baked beans, maybe? That's the best I can come up with.
No idea.
Trump win yet asking for a friend. No, Trump hasn't won, and that's a great segue. Mitizke 06. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. So the other thing we were going to talk about is I wanted to raise this week was what was going on in the U.S. with the election.
Yeah, where are we at?
So just to get you up to speed, Donald Trump lost on paper. Donald Trump isn't happy that he lost. Donald Trump, and we spoke about this last week when you weren't here. He lost by mail-in voting was the big issue. So did you watch any of the election or any of the reasons how that came to pass?
Of him losing, or the mail-in voting in general?
So the whole process of him losing.
I will cover myself and say no.
So the election night went ahead. But prior to that process, and Veg and I spoke about this, the Trump campaign was saying mail-in voting bad. There's a lot of corruption. Don't do it. Don't do it. The Biden campaign was saying COVID, be safe, get your ballots in early, vote by mail. The election happens, and on the night of the election, Trump goes ahead comfortably. But they're only getting data in from, or the votes in from the polls, from where people are going to physically vote, which is what Donald Trump was pushing for. And Donald Trump had a comfortable lead, to the point where in Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, he was in the lead. Now they started to count the mail-in votes, millions of mail-in votes. And as they counted those mail-in votes, in some instances, it was a 9-to-1 ratio to Biden.
Right. Okay.
So Donald Trump said, this is not right. We are going to investigate this, and we are going to investigate this hard. And he put together a crack legal team, and his crack legal team started to investigate issues that were. He had claims of things like this election is corrupt because my people couldn't stand within a specific distance to watch the votes, and he started to make claims that there was no Republicans allowed to, or managing these polling places where they were counting votes, which wasn't true. There was claims that there was a lot of wrongdoing and that there was ballots being counted 2 and 3 times, which was difficult to prove because whenever you have a mail-in vote, you have the actual mail-in ballot and you have the poll. So you have to actually apply to vote. So you have the actual vote and you have the application and you can compare those. So if there's a discrepancy, there's a problem. The vote doesn't count. So the states who are run by Republicans in Trump's party, where the issues came to pass, those people, those Republican officials that were running the election have said, no, we've investigated, we've counted twice. And if anything, Biden is now won by more because Trump asked for a recount. So Donald Trump said, not good enough. This is this is wrong. Definitely you haven't won. And he's still saying he's won the election. And this is becoming problematic now because his supporters, in the same vein you were talking about, all Brexit people are racist, all Trump voters are gun owners and militia members. And that's the perception. But we're now starting to see violence in certain areas because people are protesting very avaricously. Is that the word? And what's happened recently is his legal team have tried to put a case through to the Supreme Court. And effectively, what they've said, so in Texas has filed a lawsuit, and there was something like, how many was there? Let me just find the number. Texas filed a lawsuit because right now every appeal I think they've had something like 24 court cases they've put across. And of those 24 court cases they've put across, every single one of them has lost. It was 24 lawsuits. And the Supreme Court of the United States has pretty much looked at their case and said there's absolutely no evidence for any issues with the election. And so part of the problem is whenever they in the U.S. have put these cases across, there's actually no evidence that they've been able to present outside of affidavits. So affidavits are effectively people swearing under oath that what they're saying is true, and they have a perception based on what they've seen that there was wrongdoing. So the Trump election, or the Trump campaign, actually put up a website trying to solicit information from people that wanted to give information of wrongdoing. And the issue with the Supreme Court, when they look at all the court cases on balance, whenever there was a court case and the lawyers for the Trump administration were on record, they would never go on record and actually claim fraud. But whenever they were in front of their supporters, they were claiming how there was widespread fraud across the spectrum. So one of the quotes I found, which was really interesting. So under questioning from a U.S. District Judge Matthew W. Brann, Giuliani, so he's leading up the election, this is not a fraud case. So he had to say it's not a fraud case because he's under oath. So if he says it's a fraud case, they have to then investigate why he's saying it's a fraud case. He's this is something that could be a problem for him as a lawyer. In an Arizona case, the Trump campaign largely sought to dismiss on Friday. One of Mr. Trump's lawyers said during a Thursday hearing that fraud wasn't an issue in its allegations that some in-person votes cast in one of the counties were improperly rejected. We're not alleging fraud in this lawsuit. We are not alleging anyone stealing the election. So this is the Trump campaign attorney saying this. So there's a lot of weirdness going on right now over in the U.S. as it pertains to the election. They're claiming fraud, but then when they go in front of a judge, they're saying there's no fraud because they can't say that under oath if there's no evidence to back that up, and if that claim is a baseless claim. They could lose a law. There's actually penalties for that. I saw something where there was an actual penalty. So lawyers are subject to sanctions if they file frivolous lawsuits or provide false information to court, but claims are also subject to the rules of evidence. So these lawyers, when they're getting into a show me position, are pretty much saying, well, no, there's not fraud. We just wanted to raise that this might be an issue.
God.
So that's what's been going on in the U.S. right now.
Yeah, what a mess, mate. Just a false. So, by the sounds of it, falseless accusations. They're not really leading any. I'm sorry, my phone is mother-in-law. She's going to leave a message. I'll just bear with. Yeah, so you've got. I'm just going to let it go, actually.
Your call cannot be taken at this moment.
I don't know why she's not listening. I don't get this.
Oh, she's hung up early. Yeah, so I really feel for the country. I know we've got enough to kind of work through at the moment with Brexit, but it sounds like it must be a really difficult place to be. And the whole riots, I really do worry that about the states potentially going into civil war. I hope it doesn't go down that path. I really, really hope. But I think of. I'm just glad Trump isn't in office because I find him a massively divisive. Divisive.
I think. Yeah.
Divisive character, and just putting all politics aside about what he's done, good, bad, and different. Just he's someone that he kind of supports, encourages that kind of this hatred, this like team ethos. So I just think it's the wrong way to lead a really healthy country and lifestyle. I really don't like this whole team thing, and the fact that I don't know, it just I would be very frustrated living there, I think. And they're going to court, and when they nearly need to put their chips down and start, if you've got proof, then bring it forward, and if you don't, shut the hell up. Shut up and get on with whatever. Get on with some real work. Really change this country. It's this kind of you're saying Trump has lost, but he hasn't taken it well. It's like, oh, well, I suppose we're not surprised by that, are we? Because the guy's a fucking moron. He's like, I'm just talking about his character now, not talking about the stuff that he stands for or doesn't stand for.
Politics. Just the person.
I'm not talking about that at all. Just it's so obvious to see that, like, someone that's that bad a loser shouldn't be in that place in the first place. So it's just a real shame. It's been dragged. It's dragged on like this, but sadly, it's unsurprising.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all of this, Sean?
So and just to double in, because Veggie said Civil War, who against who, and I think it's worth pointing out, Huw, you're not a huge. I watch politics and I do a really terrible job of paraphrasing it, but I'm interested, and I think for you tend to not pay attention as much, and it's American politics, so it's different. So I think when you meant Civil War, you're not necessarily expecting there would be a civil war, but you don't want that sort of behavior with, armed militia, people that have guns, starting to cause trouble in the U.S. because, and civil war is, I think they're not, the people are worried that Donald Trump is going to try to take over as an authoritarian. I think there's too many checks and balances in place. But I think if we take the politics out, I don't understand. And this is what I was talking about last week. Why people that support him, and I tried to look at things without bringing my biases to the table, which I did a terrible job of, because my biases are almost impossible to ignore.
Yeah, we're human.
When you start looking at when you try to look at it from a neutral standpoint, and you start trying to find evidence to not to change your view, but to understand how people have a specific view, I can't find any information that would lead me to say that there's evidence to say that there's any wrongdoing. One of my favorite videos I've done on this channel was the video I made looking at the voter fraud for mail-in votes. And the more we go down this route, the more mail-in voting is just so. And I spoke to Veg about it last week, and I think we had some disagreement on that. If you get a chance to have a walk, it's at the end of a long show that I didn't expect to go on as long as I did. But I'm a believer that the mail-in voting is so much more secure than anything else, because you can't organize, however many 30 million votes from 30 million different houses and 30 million different applications. 30, is it 30? No, 300? No, 30 million. It's 300 people in the U.S. To coordinate any changeable action. And there's too many checks and balances in place. And if you can't prove it, then how are you supporting this? Because it's all on hopes and dreams. And from Trump's perspective, this is one thing that I hated that he never got, is that whenever he says something like, this is a fraudulent election, he's making a statement that's compromising, all of the stuff America's worked on for 200 plus years. He's putting doubt, sowing seeds of doubt, which is how a lot of authoritarian governments got started. They start to sow doubt into the process. People buy into it without evidence, and then they start to take action. And the more people buy into it, the more dangerous it is. And his words are going to kill people. His words have killed people. Now, I'm not directly blaming him for the deaths of the people. So there was people who died. Just yesterday, I think it was like 4, maybe 12 people died. Let's say 4, just to be safe. I'll have a look at the article.
This is what I'm talking about, the Civil War thing, Sean. The right versus left. It's people going to kill each other over it. It's really scary.
So there was an article here. Actually, let me bring up the article. I did save an article.
I actually do that. I just want to pass comment on what you were saying, Sean. That you know what really flags as a concern for me is that Trump is. You're suggesting that he called out that mail-in voting prior to it being done can't be done fairly. That's it. It's like it's he's making excuses already. It's like football blaming the referee before the game has even occurred. Just hang on a minute here. Just play the game. Play the game and talk about it. And if he's done something wrong, then bring up what he's done wrong. And let's go through the due process as and when he's done that. But he's complained about it beforehand without any kind of evidence. Like he's already setting it up to fail. And then off the back of it, when he's got the opportunity to come forward and challenge it, he hasn't been able to do so. I just think it's massively weak.
And Veg saying, and you said something similar to this last week, and I don't think I quite picked up on it, or I didn't register it, or I didn't really, I guess, appreciate your comment. You can't fault someone for not having evidence if you deny them the means to obtain it. I don't know that I would necessarily agree with that, because the states where there was, let's say, perceived wrongdoing, one, we're only investigating the states where Trump lost. We're not investigating any of the states that Biden lost. So the only ones we're focused on are what in America are called the swing states. Those are the states that have, they're not investigating Maine. They're not investigating Rhode Island or the District of Columbia or, Montana, which has a small number of electoral votes because the population is so low. We're investigating only the states where that would help us win. So if we can make a difference with these cases, Trump now has a chance to win. Okay. And we're not investigating. Even the things that they're bringing to investigate are not even enough votes to overturn the election. So there are 592 here, 10,000 there. But then they're making claims about ballots that aren't being registered. And where I disagree, Veg, respectfully, is where there's no evidence. There's Republicans in place who actually voted for Trump, who were overseeing these elections, who were overseeing these counting processes, who were investigating these claims. And they're not coming across with any evidence to say that there's any issues, which is why I'm not, well, so I started reading your comment. I can't do two things at once. I started to read the comment, which is why, I'm not saying that I know everything about this, but there's been, I spent hours looking for this before I did that show last week, and I couldn't find a single lick of evidence that says, there's something here that we need to pay attention to. There's none of the claims that were made had enough foundation for me to even say, ooh, that is something. Which is why I said I'm not pro-Trump. I don't care the results of the recount. It follows I wouldn't want only the Biden states recounted. They should recount as a matter of routine. I agree with that, and I think that. So wherever, from what I understand, the Trump campaign has to pay for recounts. I think they ended up paying, I don't know what it was, like $7 million to recount in Michigan. So I don't think a recount is free. So you can ask for a recount. I think a recount is mandatory if, let's say, the margin of victory is really small. So in Georgia, it was some stupid amount of votes, like 10,000 votes. It was for the size of state Georgia is. That's just nothing. I think it's less than 1% or it's 1%. They do a recount as a matter of course, but if the differential is greater, then you have to pay for a recount. And in states like Michigan, some of the claims that were made were it's mathematically impossible for the votes to come in for Biden on a 9.5 to 1 ratio. So in Detroit, for example, that's a fiercely Democratic city. And they're saying, what's unfair about it? The reason we know the Democratic vote is unfair is the ratio of votes that came in for Biden. It just wasn't right. It's impossible. And as a neutral, your first thought would probably be like, yeah, that seems really weird. But if you look at the data, Hillary in the last election and Obama, the election before, actually won by 96 and 97% in those areas that they're saying are impossible, that Biden won by 95% on mail-in voting.
Well, I was going to say, I wouldn't say it's impossible. I don't know enough. And as you've just stated there, actually, if there is proof that wouldn't be the case, that's fair enough. But my point would be that, well, if again, in American politics, unfortunately, you have these sides and it's one or the other, it's polar opposites. And if you've got one side, Trump saying mail-in voting is fraudulent, we shouldn't be going down that path, kind of insinuating if you are therefore, if you're a true Republican, you'll go in person and do it, and you'll brave the virus. Whilst you've got the Biden supporters that are like, no, protect yourself, stay at home, do mail-in voting. It's the safest way. It's best for everyone and for our services. Then I'm not surprised that Trump took an early lead. And then if most of the Biden's voters are kind of following his message and they're doing it through the mail-in vote, then most of the majority would come through there. Would it not be the case? Again, very overly simplistic way of looking at it, but I'm not surprised by that outcome based on the information you've given.
Yeah. Another one from Veg. What happens in jury trials when the person is found guilty? Is they poll each juror individually? So what happens in a jury trial when the person is found guilty is they poll each juror individually. Yeah. So too, should there be a check against voting? I think there might be a similar thing in place anyway. So I don't know that you can go back and you can check every voter's intention as far as how they voted, but you can go back and check the application. And this is why I think the mail-in voting is so much more strict. So if you look at Georgia, for example, and Donald Trump's been saying they're not checking signatures, and maybe, Veg, you can correct me on this as far as, or give me a bit of context. When you go to vote in Georgia, I did research on this last week. You have to apply in person. You have to show you have to, go in with a signature. You got to go in with ID and you apply for a ballot. They send you a ballot to your address and you have to then drop off that ballot. Before the ballot is then sent off to be counted, somebody who's trained has to verify that signature is accurate. So you've already had your ID checked. You've already had your signature checked. So you've already confirmed that that's the case. Now, in Georgia in October, just before the election, there was a primary election. In just a normal course of checking, so there was no recount, nothing, they found a Republican, and this is the same people who ran this election for the president in Georgia, who they're trying to overturn. A Republican found 1,000 votes where somebody had voted twice. So the checks and balance system caught that. And for the most part, people had not been used to mail-in voting and had put in a vote via post, but were worried that it hadn't gone in. So they went in person and they made their vote as well. But they found those votes. They were able to pick those out. They were able to find a reason. And at the end of the day, those votes didn't make any difference to the outcome. It was just something that they wanted to crack down on, because voting irregularities, voting fraud is a crime. So I think they do check. It's just to what degree.
Can I add one other point of this?
Yeah, please.
I heard someone mention this again. It's just like, again, listening to another conversation occurring, but this fraudulent voting, it isn't the case as is fraudulent voting occurring or not occurring. It is occurring. It's just to what level do we count fraudulent voting? So, there is so much manipulation with corporations and money that we don't understand exchanging and influence, and that, you can have this position if X, Y, and Z. Obviously we're not subject to any of those conversations happening, but it's I think this is a very convoluted, difficult, not the mail-in voting side of it. I just think voting in general, it's a very difficult, complex thing to get 100% fairly. I don't think we'll ever be 100% fairly. There'll always be people trying to wrongly influence people for for selfish reasons.
So
it was just an interesting point to share.
Few other comments here, and I think the second one will be, it's a good juicy one from Veg. I like it that she's we're getting in the nitty gritty here. So the error is thinking the recount should occur because fraud is suspected. What actually matters is that recounts happen routinely for no other reason than to add integrity to the process, which I agree with. And then to follow up on my point, so I was making the point that we have people that are checking signatures and checking ID. You're telling me there's enough people highly trained in handwriting verification to be available to check all those signatures. There's average citizens and volunteers that do that. And I think I understand why you're saying that. I don't necessarily think that is a reason to contradict. How am I trying to word this? I don't think that is a determining factor in the outcome of the election as such. And the reason I say that is, one, in the US, they're still doing that when you make a payment. So they're starting to go to contactless. One of the weird things about the United States is they're about 8 years behind the rest of the world with contactless. Well, how long have we've been doing chip and pin over here?
God, yeah, a while.
15, 20 years?
Do you still get checks over there as well? Like, they have wage checks and stuff.
I don't know. I don't know. I
find it so weird.
Whenever I see a check, I'm like, you're fucking kidding me. What do you want me to do with this thing? But so right now in the States, they're verifying signatures on payments, like big payments too. So people are having to verify signatures who don't have any training in signature verification. I think it's a common thing. But if we take a look at and maybe I'm misunderstanding the point of the comment. So you're telling me there's enough people highly trained in handwriting verification to be able to check all those signatures. It's average citizens and volunteers doing that. So I don't know that's the case in Georgia. I don't think it's volunteers that are doing this checking. I think volunteers are doing the counting. But we can check that. I'm not 100% sure. But I think the people that are counting the votes are the volunteers. I think the people that are verifying are not volunteers. But that doesn't mean that there isn't any room for error in that process. 100% there's room for error. And there's documented cases of voter fraud or voter irregularities. But there's just not enough instances where it impacts the election historically. And even if you were to go back, that whole process in place, even if, let's say, there are people that are trying to involve themselves in the system, I just can't. And this is, I want to be very careful because I was getting close to strawman territory last week, Veg. I think there's an area where, how are you going to strategically impact an election if every application is going to a registered address? The same as banking details, same as your checks, you're sending money. So the Trump administration sent checks for it was like $1,000 over during COVID to every American. So that address was fine to use for a secure payment, but now we're just checking a voting registry against an address. It's not good enough. And I'm going to come to the other comments, but just because it's on point, I want to make sure I get Veg's point in. It's a common thing in a context where we have the technology to do it in a different way that better safeguards the integrity of the process. And I think that was Veg's point last week that you missed, Hugo, was Veg believes that we need to look at more technical solutions, fingerprints recognition. I question, my only issue with that was you're potentially going to be blocking out a lot of poor and minority communities who are poorly educated because they're going to be afraid in an equal society to go through that process. But I think it's something that we have to look at. I think, Veg, I agree with you on the whole idea of that. If there's an easier way to do that, that's not subject to outside access or hacking 100%. So we've blocked.
Can I make a point as well? Because I think part of the problem here is that there's too much disparity between a right and a left wing, and that there shouldn't be this half of the country hates the person in charge and half the country's ecstatic, and then it reverses. It shouldn't be that way, and that there should be much more focus on a middle ground on using both methods to try and find some resolution moving forward. It shouldn't be this way, we're going to do everything left and that's just the way it is, versus everything right. I know it doesn't work like that, Sean, as well. I know enough to appreciate it doesn't work like that. Just because Biden's coming in, it's not going to get his own way 100%. But he's going to have more influence. But these, I think, as like an overriding issue, like I think we could debate the rights and wrongs and Veg's argument. I have heard that, and I actually did hear the counter, which is what you said previously, and made me think, technology, why aren't we using it? But unfortunately, you're going to have to be realistic that not everyone's in a position to do that, and we are going to segregate people, and we want inclusivity, don't we? We want everyone to be involved with it. But I think just if we were able to create a place where actually the outcome was less of an impact, there was an impact, but not as much to the extent that it is now, this hatred behind it. I think that we wouldn't have to focus and waste time and energy on this type of stuff, and even talking about this, really. Like, as a matter of fact, I back up what Veg says, and you should be recounting it for integrity's sake, but there just shouldn't be this animosity or wasted energy around fraudulent behavior.
Yeah. We've got some different comments, which I think he might have left, or she might have left, which is a shame. We'll come back to you, Veg, but we're getting really interesting comments today, which I'm really excited about. So Trump won, get over it. Okay. And remember, jealousy and envy separates us. I agree wholeheartedly with that. 100%. I don't know that I agree with this piece, but I respect your opinion if you're still here. And I'm proud, and you should very well be proud. And I don't know exactly what you're proud of, but if you want to add more comment, let me know. And then you think you know everything, you don't. And Huw, I don't think it's fair that they said that about you. I mean, you've not.
They're right. No, actually, they're wrong, because I
think they were talking to me probably about me acting all high and mighty. But
no, I think we both state very clearly that we don't know everything.
I will say that my. Oh, sorry, mate.
No, that's it. I think you know everything you don't know. I certainly I'll tell you I don't know everything, and that's just fine.
And I think I don't know what USB means outside of I know what a USB is, and I don't know if that has something to do with the tech. And I think that's a fair point. I just wish, if you're still here, just give me some examples on what we need to know. Because part of the reason I raise these things week in and week out, and what this is more the kind of conversation I wanted to have about these things. It's not about me giving my opinion. It's me having a discussion. And you know, when we have Veg on, she gets it because it's a conversation. It's not, if I disagree with her and she disagrees with me, it's not about being personal. It's just help me, you know, give me your point of view. And there's things that she said that have challenged my thinking and make me stop and pause. But you know, it's fine. Say I don't know shit. Say I can handle that. But let's back that up with a bit of tell me why. Educate me, because if Trump won, get over it. Why? Maybe I could be a good advocate for your side. Maybe Huw, you could be a good advocate in the UK for this side. Maybe there's a message that we're missing. But stay on the line. Give us a bit more than that.
Look, we don't know everything, but I tell you what we'll push back on is we'll listen. Like, so that's what we take great pride in, that, and that we can disagree, and like Shawn and Veg are going back and forth on a lot of points. I think they're both kind of making very good points. I'm kind of sat in the middle, to be honest, but
yeah,
this is what it's about, isn't it? It's about just expressing. I think just having a platform to express yourself openly and honestly, and to not get too carried away either side. Letting both sides tell a story to try and become better informed, and grow and progress as a result, ideally.
Yeah, and like I said, I have no problem with people, you know, making any statement. I want more engagement. I don't even mind if somebody trashes you and I, you know, says, I mean, of course, within reason. You know, we don't want people to be, you know, offensive to a point where it's going to put people off from joining the conversation. But
it's going to happen. I hope that it happens, because it will show we've got a level of success coming in, because there are sadly people out there that hate us. And, you know, I'm going to push back on this guy or this girl that's made that comment, because, you know, they've got one sentence kind of statements. They're coming in, dropping, and then they're going away. Like, it's just, if you've got something to say, stay here and say it. Like, that's what Veg, that's the point. If you've got something to say, we want to hear about it, because you know what, we're open to you being right, but at the moment you're not really doing anything. So just stand up, have some balls, and stand up to your statement, and go through with it.
But I think, can we count this as the first? This is the first. It's not a negative comment as such. I don't think there's enough to it. But
I would say it's a negative. You think you know everything?
I think this is good. This is a paramount moment for our channel. We've been doing this for a year.
Trolling.
I'm enjoying it. So let's get the next few comments in. We'll probably look to wrap it up in the next 20 minutes. So I'm not pro-Trump, wouldn't vote for him. I just think people have an aversion or reaction to his personality that causes him to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I couldn't agree more with that. I think it makes it hard for me to get past my biases, because I look at it, and this is why I want somebody like D Blockade or Blockhead or whatever it is to get into the conversation. Because I am, what's the word I'm looking for? Incredulous to understand, you know, how people can buy into the election, just as an example, into the election narrative when there's never any substance. And I think that's probably where the aversion is. This is why it's so important for a president to be a good communicator, a prime minister to be a good communicator, because you're not just communicating to your supporters and your base. You're trying to win the other side. And I said this to you going in, it was about a month ago, and it was probably a comment that is, you know, we'd have to find. I remember saying that somebody raised the point, it wasn't me, that the election was going to be decided on the independents and the people who are in the middle, not the base, because the people that support Trump are going to support Trump, and the people that hate Trump are going to hate Trump. It's those people that are the middle ground that are going to be changing things. And if your message, if you're communicating, as somebody who I consider myself professionally somebody who manages communication, that is my area of expertise. The way he does that is so bad. So it's not that he's unpolished. It's just the way he communicates is so poor as far as just getting a message across to a group of people. However, he simplifies the message very well. So he does do one thing well as far as messaging. He speaks a very specific message to a specific group of people very well. So it's not about who's right and who's wrong. It's about entering into a dialogue where everyone can discover things they otherwise would not have. And I couldn't agree more. And I think that's kind of what we want to get here. I like debate. I like having an opinion, but I also am not the arbiter of knowledge.
Can I add something to this as well? Verge's point, which I think that it's a really valid point, because I've kind of gone into that. I definitely wouldn't say I'm delighted, Joe. Well, I'm definitely on the side. I think it's better for the world that Trump isn't in power. Like overall,
and that's as a British citizen too. You're somebody who doesn't have a dog in that fight.
Follow anything, but I just think as a personality, he's no. As a leader, he's a terrible leader. I know enough about leadership to know when I see a good leader or not, and he's a terrible leader. I don't even know about the politics side of things and what he's kind of shooting for or not. I just don't see him as a leadership guy. Your point right there on the screen, I couldn't agree more with. And what I think is one of his failings is the fact that he doesn't seem to have the type of personality. And I'm not suggesting Biden is, by the way. I think I heard enough and saw some clips of their first debate. I thought they were both pretty disgraceful. That Trump is the type of person that doesn't seem to allow a dialogue opposing to what he believes. It's his way and the other person's wrong, or they're lying, or it's fake news, or he's got this kind of he doesn't create the environment to allow the opposing view to come in. And I think that's his failing. And I think that's politicians failing in general. That's politics failing. That happens over here, Veg, as well. And that's something I really push for. Your statement right there is just we should have an environment where we can come forward and the other side just listens and really tries to understand where they're coming from, to just see whether or not they could get on board with that. So sorry to cut you off there, Sean, but I felt like that statement, like, my aversion to his personality has made me feel that way, but I'll also have another follow-up of Veg, that one of my friends has done the opposite of what Sean has done here, in that he married someone over the States and he's over there now, and he's heavily into politics and he's heavily into the left side, to the extent that he has some health concerns and still went on some of the Black Lives Matter protests because he believed that strongly in it. So just to give you an indication of where he kind of stands on it. And when Trump won, when Trump was out and Biden won, he had this kind of celebratory picture of him, kind of like class fix, like celebrating. And I just thought, I was really disappointed to see that. And this is from one of my friends. And I just thought, like, that isn't the way to conduct yourself either. And that there's half of the country, very close to half of the country here, are feeling scared, worried, anxious, and all the above. And I just feel like we shouldn't be creating that type of environment. But unfortunately, Trump's personality has kind of created that. So I agree with your point. I think it's true, but I think he's been part of that process, a strong part of it.
And I think we're going to change gears here in a second, but I think we definitely need to get our last comment. And if you agree with anything the ostracized person says, that means you are like them and are therefore risk of being ostracized too. So you'd better jump on the bandwagon and hate on the person with the rest of us. These are unspoken social rules applicable to this situation with Trump. And I think that very much locks into some of the stuff that we spoke about and learned about when we watched The Social Dilemma. And we heard some elements on that sort of that team mentality.
People should be able to give Trump credit still. Like, I don't like him as a person, but I'd be almost certain I could look into stuff that he did in Korea. Like he crossed boundaries. He did good. Like, we should give him the credit that he's due in those areas, irrelevant of where he's from. But sorry, mate.
No, I started to speak over you there. I think even North Korea is something I've said before. I don't think. So this is going to sound very biasy because I don't like Trump, but I'm just going to share my thoughts and just take them how you want to and judge me for what I say. I think he fell ass backwards into something that was good and his intentions were good. I don't think he's a genius when it comes to relations as such. I think he's somebody who likes to be liked. He's a natural salesperson. And I think he didn't know the history and how, his decisions would have impacted negotiations or talks. He just did what a salesperson thought would be best. I'm just going to cross the line and shake the man's hand. We're going to have a meal. We're going to play a round of golf together. Everything's going to be fine. And that approach, I like that approach. I don't think
politics needs that.
Yeah. And I give him credit for that.
Yeah, a lot of what he stands for, I can understand why people voted him in, because he was a change to politics. And I'm just, the reason I don't get into this, and I'm not that well informed, Veg and Sean, is that and 8 other viewers, is the fact that I just can't stand politics. I just think the whole thing is corrupt. It's a broken system. I can't support it. So to have someone come in that's just coming from a different level, he's already got money. He doesn't need to be on the red side or whatever. He can just be him. I think that's refreshing, and I hope, at the very least, what's come off the back of this is that more people can come forward that aren't from that politician background and can just represent and be more human.
Kanye's looking for
it. And I think that again, my point earlier, Sean, was that people need to give the other side credit where it's due. And Veg was saying, and not just hate on the person because they're on the other side and we don't like them. You should give credit where it's due, irrespective of where you lean.
Yeah. Last comment, and then I'm going to change gears to our last topic, which I think that's going to be sports related. Veg, I'm sorry, and I'll bring that. I don't think I put this on our list for today. Last thing, true leaders evaluate truth claims on the basis of their validity, not on the basis of whose mouth they came out of. Maybe true leaders. True leaders. Yeah, I was going to say not all leaders do that, but true leaders evaluate truth claims on the basis of their validity, not on the basis of whose mouth they come out of. Where I think there is some crossover, where you do find people who you trust and you value their views. So there is some element to who you're referencing when it comes to evaluating what somebody is saying. But I think true leaders will make a decision based on numbers and experience and the voice of people that they trust. I think a true leader, we've talked about this, isn't somebody who's just going to say it's my way or the highway. We need to get a few different voices in the room, and we need to discuss this out. These are complex issues.
And I think true leaders on the opposing side to Veg's comment will not just will be able to come forward with the evidence and back up their claims as well. They should absolutely do that.
So last point, I thought it would be good just to get a little sports in. I think I wanted to speak Anthony Joshua.
Oh, this is changing gears. Okay. Are you
I like Anthony Joshua, and I've grown to like Tyson Fury. And I didn't watch the fight. I watched some of the I didn't watch some of the fight. And Veg, we'll come back. We'll double back to actually while your phone's ringing. Here you go. But even if you trust their views, you can still evaluate those views to reinforce they ought to continue to trust them. Yes. This is I think Veg is in a boxing fan. We'll see you next week. Thanks for stopping by. Always appreciate you.
As well for her input. I love it. I think it's fantastic, and she's I'd love to actually get her on at one stage. Sean.
That's not a bad idea, Veg. We may have you on. Get you on as a third talking head from time to time.
Yeah, thank you for your inputs, Veg.
So let's take a look. Let's talk Anthony Joshua before we wrap up. And I'll say I've always rooted for Anthony Joshua. He was the first boxer that I was nervous to watch when he was on his 7th or 8th fight. Because he was truly spectacular to watch as a fighter. I've never seen a boxer, and even I've seen Dylan White fight, and people can say that Anthony Joshua is sort of a poor man's Dylan White in punching power and his ability to knock somebody out. For some reason, I always and maybe it's because I have some bias towards Joshua, because he's always been a fairly respectful boxer when it comes to the trash talking and the way he carries himself. I can get behind
very well. Yeah, I can see that.
And he comes across as a real genuine champion. And he won a fight against, from what I understand, is a capable, not flashy boxer. Somebody who's got a lot of experience, and it was a good win for him, from what I understand. Listening to some of the interviews, it sounds like it's still a bit unpolished. I saw it was Dylan White when they were interviewing him in this article was saying it looked like he was in and out of a few different styles and didn't put him away when he should have, but it was a workmanlike experience from other people. But it'll be interesting because now this sets the stage for a fight with Tyson Fury. And Tyson Fury, I have a few different opinions on, because at one time I wanted to see Anthony Joshua knock him out, just shut him up and knock him out. And to be fair to Tyson Fury, he's had battles with mental health, and The things he said, let's say 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, he probably wouldn't say now, is my opinion.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Tyson Fury, I have a lot of respect for him now because I think he's come a long way as a boxer, and he is just an impressive individual for his size, his speed, his movement. I kind of like, and now the thing that's happened sort of 360 with Tyson Fury for me, all that trash talk that annoyed me, now I love it when he's coming into the house of these like Dylan Whites, and you know, he just doesn't care. He goes into these boxers in the US who, you know, just mauled everybody and scared the hell out of everybody, and they come up to Tyson Fury, who he's tall, he's weird looking. He doesn't look, he looks imposing, but I don't think he looks like Joshua looks intimidating. If I was going into the ring and somebody just said, you've got to fight Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, and I had no reference as far as what kind of a boxer they was, I would choose Tyson Fury all day. It just on looking at him, just on physique and demeanor. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go with Tyson Fury. But he's a freak as far as how he moves and how he boxes and how intelligent he is. And I'm a bit torn as far as who I want to win that fight.
Yeah, great point, mate, because I felt the same as you. I find Tyson Fury irritating many years ago, and it was only more over the last kind of 3 years that he's grown on me. And particularly when I was all in on Tyson Fury when I watched him on Rogan's podcast. I got to see a whole different side of him. Again, that's what I love about that long form format, where you can listen to someone to talk very naturally and openly about all these different things that are going on, and you can really base your opinion on them. Even those people that you may dislike, it kind of gives you a different angle. And I think it's a really healthy way to conduct social interactions. So yeah, I'm all on side. I think that I think Anthony Joshua's in a world of trouble, and I think he's going to be I think he's going to be put to sleep by well, he's going to be at least outboxed, but I think he could be knocked out even by Tyson Fury, because Tyson Fury is a far superior boxer. I don't think anyone would deny that. Anthony Joshua is a specimen, so he could knock any man in the world out, including Tyson Fury. But Tyson Fury's defense is exceptional. So I think it's going to be very interesting over here, actually, of who people are going to support, because Anthony Joshua is your classic, council house, brought up, rough upbringing, kid that was going down the path of maybe trouble or not. And I've seen a documentary on him. He's still so humble. He goes back, the way he speaks to people he grew up with that are still living in those conditions, and he just gives them all the time and that they need. He speaks so well. He's just he just looks a really cool guy, like so likable. He's a specimen. You want him to do well. And you've got Tyson Fury, who is been through a whole host of challenges, very quirky, just very different background, but so charismatic and fun. And I love what he stands for. And even like the gesture against Deontay Wilder and put his entire purse, a huge purse, towards charity. I think that speaks volumes of his character too. And I think the nation's really gone a full circle on Tyson Fury, where he was booed at the Sports Personality of the Year. I don't think that's the case anymore. And I agree. I actually think his comments, he'd probably, if he did not believe those comments, I don't think he would state them now. He's gone above that. So yeah, I think I fear for Anthony Joshua. I can't wait for it to happen. But it'd be interesting to see where people lean.
I don't think it, for me, if I were to give a percentage, I'd say it's 65-70% chance Tyson Fury wins. The thing I would say, though, is I've never found Tyson Fury in all the fights I've watched him to be a knockout boxer. He has knocked people out, but he is very similar. He's like a real big version of Floyd Mayweather in how he fights. He scores points. He's elusive. He wears people down. And I know he's knocked people out. I think he knocked somebody out recently in his last fight. No, he didn't knock out Dylan. Did he knock out Dylan? Not Dylan White. Deontay Wilder. And Deontay Wilder is somebody I was so happy Tyson Fury was the man taking him on, because I find Deontay Wilder just abominable. I just can't stand the guy.
You need to listen to his story on Rogan. It's unbelievable what he's been through.
When these guys are humble, yeah. But it's how you take a look at Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and they have the same drive as professional athletes to be incredible at what they do. And they have in a lot of these golf. You look at Tiger Woods as a golfer or Michael Jordan. We talked about this. They have this arrogance that you kind of have to be the best in the world, and to the point where they can't fathom losing, and they psych themselves up to be these just arrogant dicks. But the way Tyson Fury does it, there's like a style to it that's just likable, and the way Deontay Wilder does it is just.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree and disagree. I don't think you need to be an arrogant dick to be the best in the world. I disagree with that. I think there are examples in other sports where people aren't. They're the world's greatest, nice people. Tennis, there's probably 3 examples of that, or at least 2 in Nadal and Federer, arguably 2 of the best ever that aren't like that at all.
Yeah, like, I would agree.
Gentlemen. And on the but back to your point on the Deontay Wilder, his story is phenomenal. So I think that because he was driving trucks not that many years ago, when we hated Tyson Fury, like he went into the Olympics off the back of it was something like 18 months training, and he won the Olympics off the back of next to no training. Like that's almost unheard of. An Olympic cycle, you don't train in an Olympic cycle. You've been training for multiple Olympic cycles to get to the point to challenge for a trophy. So he was driving, I think he was a truck driver or post or delivery man. And then in a short amount of time, turned around. You know, he's had such a rough upbringing. But I do 100% agree with you in that his confidence, the way he portrays himself, for me, it's like there's an aversion to it. Like I don't find it appealing at all. Tyson Fury is a bit like Conor McGregor in that, like his arrogance and over the top there's a showmanship to it, which is funny.
It's like Ali. Ali was exactly like that.
Yeah, it's like it's so captivating. Like I love the games that he plays and the smack talking, and like he looks like he's really enjoying himself, and I'm enjoying watching him. I love all that type of that build up with him, but I don't get the same feeling with Deontay.
Because I think Anthony Joshua's got an arrogance to him, even. You know, Anthony, I think you do have to have the sense that you.
I don't think he's arrogant. I think he's very confident.
I would even say if you go to Federer, for example, I think he can't comprehend privately when he loses. It just doesn't. It's not something that enters his mind. It's like I'm good. Of course, I'm going to win. I mean, Djokovic is he's fairly arrogant, but you know, again, he's not an awful person. Tom Brady in the NFL, definitely arrogant, but I'm sure he's not an awful person. But Dylan White, like there's times where I'm just like, you are a terrible human being, and that's like whenever. Deontay Wilder is a terrible human being sometimes. Not I don't think he really is, but there's just times where he comes across like that. And Tyson Fury, like when that fight happened, he was like, I was just thinking he is the right man for the right time for this job, because there's no way Deontay Wilder's trash talk was able to be taken seriously with the way that Tyson Fury clowns. And I love that. And it was like I now have permission to enjoy Tyson Fury because he's not that guy that he was. And it's this time around, we know that there's a mutual respect now. Tyson Fury has talked about Anthony Joshua publicly. And Tyson Fury has said some really interesting things. I don't know if you've heard some of the quotes he's had about Anthony Joshua.
No,
I don't actually. Let me see, because I'd have to find it. I wasn't prepared for this, but you'll have to look it up. Anybody who does watch this, he was talking about Anthony Joshua and giving him a lot of respect for where he's come from, and he said how Anthony Joshua is a talented person. He has referenced Anthony Joshua as being a bodybuilder, but he has conceded recently that Joshua is a very good boxer, and he just needs to make the right. I forget what it was. He was just making comments on how he has to make the right decisions as a boxer and listen to the right people. And there has been people out there about Joshua saying he's got too many people in his camp talking to him about too many things, and it's confusing him. And Tyson Fury has a much better head on his shoulders now. And knowing now that he has respect for Joshua, and Joshua has said he has respect for Tyson Fury, I wonder if it's going to be the typical Tyson Fury trash talking fight. I mean, Joshua does go into the trash talking a little bit, but it's just a little bit more quiet power than, let's say, a Deontay Wilder would. So I want to jump into a prediction here. I'm going to try to predict what's going to happen. I think it's going to go the distance. That's my first prediction.
Yeah.
I think Joshua is going to almost knock out Fury. But we know that Joshua knocked out somebody who I didn't think he would ever knock out in Klitschko. I never thought Joshua would knock out Klitschko ever.
Yeah.
So Joshua has it in him to knock anyone in the world out, like you said.
Anyone.
And Joshua has one of the, I think, as far as a forehand is concerned, has one of the most just devastating. I think more so than Deontay Wilder. I think negligibly.
I disagree on that, but I think Deontay's got the most power problem, maybe of any heavyweight of all time.
I just think so. I'm not an expert and I'm not a boxing expert. When I watch it as a layperson, Deontay Wilder seems a lot wilder as far as his technique.
I would say he probably is, yes.
And I think Joshua is more controlled and within himself and compact. And I think he is more efficient as a puncher. And I think I'm not saying one is. I am saying one's better than the other. Let's just say they're thereabouts. But I think Joshua, because he's not so all over the place, I think he could sneak a knockout or a knockdown at the very least of Tyson Fury.
For sure.
However, Tyson Fury, one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in boxing was when Tyson Fury got up against Deontay Wilder. I think it was the fight they drew, and he just was like knocked out, and he was like jumped like it was almost like a robot getting, sort of terminated getting up.
That Undertaker from wrestling, that little gif that was fantastic. It was perfect.
I don't see Tyson Fury losing, but I see it as being actually an incredible fight where Joshua is going to threaten a few knockdowns. I don't think Tyson's going to put Joshua down. If he does, it's going to be like a freaky catches him off guard because he's got quick hands, but it's not going to shake him. That's my prediction.
You know what my thoughts are, Sean, as well, is that I would. So I think if I put money on the line, I would say
it's recording, so we can go back to this after the fight.
So where I put my money is that Fury win by decision. I think that
I agree.
I think that he can knock out because he left his trainer and he's gone with someone that is a very aggressive fighter. Maybe he did that just for the Wilder rematch. I'm not actually sure. I don't follow it enough constantly to know. I like to follow the main fights, but I don't watch all the in between. So I'm not sure whether he's going to work with the same guy. So he might go aggressive once again on Joshua, and Joshua gets hit. So that's my concern, is that Tyson Fury isn't a knockout artist. That's not what he's best for. He's best for evading punches and landing punches through his movement. His movement is unbelievable, and with his reach, because of the just sheer size of him, you can knock anyone out as well. So I think Tyson Fury could absolutely knock out Joshua, but I think it's more likely, if I was going to put money on, to go to a decision. Flip side, Anthony Joshua can absolutely knock out Tyson Fury. He can knock anyone out. He is an absolute beast.
It wouldn't be a ridiculous result. It wouldn't be shocking. It would be shocking, but it wouldn't be like I would say
unlikely because of
unlikely.
Tyson Fury is so good at evading being punched, and I think Joshua still has holes in his game. He's still a little bit. He's more tight than Deontay. Deontay, I believe, has got more power in his right hand. I think actually the fight between Deontay and Joshua would be fascinating. I'd love to watch that. But I think Fury has them both for breakfast. I think that he's more skilled. He's a bigger man, and he's more skilled. He's smarter. He's a smarter boxer, and as a result, I think it's going to be in his favor.
So I think we agree on the result. I think it's something we pretty much agree on what's going to happen.
I agree.
I wouldn't put any money on the fight either way, though. I just wouldn't feel good enough, and that's why I say I don't think it's impossible that if Joshua knocks out Fury, I think it's going to be like, that was incredible. I didn't expect that, but I'm not surprised. Is because he has it within him, and there would definitely be a rematch. I know there's some grumblings that Joshua hasn't acknowledged there will be a fight. I think he's just being a good businessman there and letting If I were Joshua, I wouldn't be saying yes, rematch now. I'd want Tyson to show up because he's got the money, and I wouldn't want to show my cards too soon. I'd want Tyson to be, maybe he's not going to do it. Let's put some more money into his pocket, get him into this fight. We need to make it happen now, because every time Joshua fights, it's going to be, every time he comes out with a win, it's going to be harder for Fury to beat Joshua. And I think if Fury wants to be, I guess, the unified title holder, he's going to have to beat Joshua now, really.
It could be hard. I just don't think Joshua will. If they fought each other 10 times, he could beat him. But I think unless Tyson goes over the hill, I just see him having he's just got too much talent for him.
That's what I mean, though. The age is there, but I think every time Joshua gets into a big fight, he learns something new. It's not as if he's taken any massive steps backwards. He's a better boxer than he was 5 years ago. And I think every time Joshua gets another fight under his belt, it's going to be that much harder for Fury to put him out. So I think Fury definitely wants to get that fight in now because this is like the prime time. Joshua still has some chinks in the armor. Fury is still in good shape, and every year Fury gets older. How old's Fury? He's like early 30s. Hey, Google, how old is Tyson Fury?
Mike Tyson is 54 years old.
Hey, Google, how old is Tyson Fury?
Tyson Fury is 32 years old.
Yeah, 32. I guess that.
He's in its prime, basically.
It's a good, I think you can, it was up to like 38. I think 30 to 38 is sort of a prime age for boxers. And you still can be competitive in your 40s.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's been a number of people that have been able to do that. And I think at heavyweight, you may be able to carry that even a bit longer, like George Foreman was, I think, set one of the records as well. But
he was in his 50s. Evander Holyfield, actually, he boxed late.
There are still people like Mike Tyson could put a number on some people. Like he still carries his power with him.
I didn't watch that fight. I need to watch clips of that fight.
I didn't watch it either, but I watched both of the interviews on Rogan, and it was fascinating watching them both talk. I absolutely loved it. But it would be a really fascinating fight for the country, and it's one of those great positions where I kind of support whoever wins. Like it'd be great going into it because I like both of them, and I think that Tyson will win. I think he's a better boxer, but I just really love Anthony Joshua. So if he won, I'd be really happy for him too. It's a really nice sporting occasion for me.
Well, mate, I think we've been going on for 2 hours and 45 minutes. I'm gonna have to break this up into smaller sections and really enjoyed this week, mate.
Likewise, buddy. Yeah, I just really loved the input from. We had multiple people commenting. It's been 2 weeks since we've caught up. We've talked about loads of different things, mate, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it too.
Well, stay on the line after we log off because I wanted to mention something off air. But to anybody who has watched or listened to this through, we've had people in and out. We've had a bunch of new people jumping on to comment. That's great. And we're going to keep trying to make content that people want to join the conversation on. So just want to make sure that you can reach out to us. So on Twitter and Periscope, which we've had people logging in on, it's Bearded Philoso1. We do have a Facebook page, but it's a pile of shit. But feel free to jump on. It's Bearded Philosophy, and we're still getting close to launching. We're in beta of the Bearded Philosophy Instagram account. It's in its beta phase right now, so I'm testing it. And just any day now, we are going to launch it. But again, we'll keep you posted as to progress on that. So, mate, to everybody else, thank you so much, and we look forward to catching up with you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Take care.